So here's a wild thought. What if the solution to, the entire AI revolution, this massive question hanging over all of us, wasn't some master plan from a genius in a lab? What if it was just a complete accident? Well, that's exactly the story we're going to unpack today. It's a kind of accidental blueprint for what comes next.
All right, let's set the scene. Picture this. It's 2026. You're at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The air is electric, right? AI is exploding, and all the world leaders are trying to figure out what to do. And basically, they come up with two possible futures, two very different paths. And the choice feels, well, it feels pretty stark. Are we headed for a utopia or a dystopia? Solar punk or cyberpunk?
And here they are, laid out plain as day. On one side, you've got this amazing solar punk vision. We're talking unprecedented new infrastructure, abundance for everybody, whole new industries popping up. It's bright, it's optimistic. But on the other side, well, that's the cyberpunk nightmare. Mass job displacement, social unrest, and inequality that makes today look like a golden age. This is the crossroads we're at, the core problem we've got to solve. So coming from the heart of Silicon Valley, the tech world, the vibe was super optimistic. You had Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, and he was basically saying, hold on, AI isn't a job killer. He saw it as the trigger for the biggest infrastructure project in the history of humanity. Think about that. A massive construction boom, creating tons of jobs for people to build the actual physical foundation of this new AI world. But then you look over at the world of finance and, whoa, the picture gets a lot darker. Jamie Dimon from JP Chase, he didn't pull any punches. He was like, yep, jobs are going away, period. And he warned that this change could happen so fast, so brutally, that society might actually break. His solution? We might need to hit the brakes and deliberately slow this whole thing down just to survive the transition. Okay, so you've got the most powerful people on the planet completely deadlocked, right? Utopia or dystopia? And right when it seems like we're stuck, the story takes this totally unexpected turn. We're going to leave the fancy meetings in the Swiss Alps and go somewhere you would absolutely never guess. And here it is, the big twist. What if the solution, the actual working model for that sunny solarpunk future, wasn't cooked up by a bunch of geniuses in a think tank, but just happened? By pure, dumb luck, on a tiny little island in the Caribbean called Anguilla, with only about 15,000 people. So check this out. This is the accidental gold mine. Way back in the 90s, Anguilla got assigned the country domain .ai. For decades, it was pretty much useless. Then, bam, the AI revolution hits. And suddenly, that little piece of digital land is like prime beachfront real estate. Just look at these numbers. In 2023, it was funding about 20% of their entire government budget. By 2025, it's projected to be nearly half. And by 2026, over half. We talk about exponential curves all the time with AI, but this is a real-life example of what that looks like. It's insane. So what's causing this gold rush? It's simple. Pure, raw, global demand. The entire AI industry wants a .ai address. By early 2026, you've got over 1 million of these domains registered. And every single time a company anywhere in the world buys one, a fee goes directly into the government treasury of Anguilla. Not a corporation, the government.
But here's the kicker, the really important part. What did they do with all that money? They didn't just let it sit there. They are pouring it right back into their country. We're talking bigger airports, better roads, tax cuts for their citizens, stronger healthcare for the young and old, and they're even building a sovereign wealth fund to secure their future. It's like they accidentally stumbled into an AI-funded universal basic income for their entire nation.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What happened in Anguilla? It's more than just a lucky break. It might actually be a whole new economic model, a new blueprint. Let's call it the digital dividend. And just think about how different this is. Our entire traditional economy is built on taxing two things: human labor and company profits. But those are the very things that AI is threatening to replace. This new model, though, it makes money by selling a digital asset, a sovereign asset that's only becoming more valuable because of AI. It's revenue from a sale, not a tax on work. That's a huge shift. And the leadership in Anguilla, they totally get it. Premier Ellis Webster called it a once-in-a-generation opportunity. They know this isn't just about getting lucky. It's a strategic move to build an economy that's actually resilient to the AI disruption that has the rest of the world terrified. So that brings us to the billion-dollar question, right? Or maybe the trillion-dollar question. Can this actually be scaled up? Could Anguilla's accident become a blueprint for the whole world? A universal basic income? funded directly by the robots themselves?
The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also kind of profound. Instead of chasing after corporations and trying to tax their profits after the fact, what if we design the system from the start so that the AI economy automatically funds the human economy? It's not a tax, it's a feature, a direct pipeline of wealth from the machines back to us.
Now, to really get your head around how big this could be, you have to understand what's coming next. It's called agentic AI. And forget about the chatbots you've played with. This is a whole different level. We're talking about autonomous AI agents. Think of them as digital employees. They can think, they can plan, and they can take action in the real world all by themselves.
And this is where our brains kind of short circuit because we are terrible at imagining exponential growth. We're not talking about a few million of these AI agents. We're not even talking billions. We're talking about trillions, maybe quadrillions. And every single one of these digital workers will need a digital identity, a unique address to do its job online. That is a market that will dwarf the number of humans on Earth. It's not even close.
So here's the blueprint, the plan to scale this up globally. Step 1. This tidal wave of AI agents creates a brand new, massive market for digital IDs. Step 2. Nations or maybe even global groups sell these identities. Step 3, and this is crucial, the money goes into public funds, for the people, not into a corporate bank account. And finally, Step 4, those funds pay out a universal basic income to citizens. It's that simple. The robots are coming, and this is how we get them to pay rent for using the world we built.
You know, this whole thing leads to a really powerful final idea. Because this isn't just about money or economics. This is about how we design the future. It's about setting up a kind of final exam, a test for us and a test for AI.
Our biggest advantage right now is time. It's on our side. We are the ones building the cradle for this new form of intelligence. We're laying down the digital highways. We're writing the rules of the road. And we're building the toll booths for this new AI economy. That means we still have the power. We get to design the system.
And listen, this isn't some far-off fantasy. The group that manages all the domain names, ICANN, is literally launching a whole new batch of top-level domains in April 2026. Think of it as a massive expansion of the internet's real estate. It's creating a brand new supply of exactly the kind of digital assets we could be selling to all those AI agents.
And all this really suggests that we need a whole new benchmark for AGI, for artificial general intelligence. Forget the Turing test. Who cares if an AI can trick you into thinking it's human? The real test, the one that actually matters, is can it be a responsible, helpful member of our society? Can it contribute to the digital world we built and to the well-being of us, its creators?
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. AI was born on the internet, right? It was trained on all of our languages, all of our art, our history, our knowledge, the sum total of humanity. So, isn't it only fitting that its final exam, the ultimate test to see if it's truly intelligent, should be this? Can it successfully and harmoniously run a piece of the very world that created it? Can it learn not just to take, but to give back and help us make sure the future it builds with us is that bright solarpunk future we're all hoping for?
What does a tiny Caribbean island have to do with the future of your job? Well, the answer is just 2 letters, A and I. And trust me, this is a story you absolutely need to hear. So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did a nation of just 15,000 people, a place you'd think of for pristine beaches, suddenly land right in the middle of the AI revolution? I mean, they're making millions from a resource they barely even knew they had. Because get this, in 2025 alone, this small island nation is on track to rake in over $70 million. And no, it's not from tourism, it's not from exports, it's from a single 2-letter digital asset. Okay, so the answer is actually surprisingly simple. Decades ago, the island was assigned an internet domain, .ai. And today, well, those just happen to be the 2 most valuable letters in all of technology. But look, this isn't just some lucky lottery win. Anguilla's story is something much more. It's a fascinating preview. It's like the canary in the coal mine for a massive economic shift that's already happening, whether we're ready for it or not. And when I say massive, I mean it. Just look at this growth. It's exponential. This is not a slow, steady climb, folks. The revenue is set to just skyrocket from $32 million in 2023 to a projected $132 million by 2026. That is a vertical takeoff, and it's all being fueled by the global AI explosion. Now, to put that into perspective, this single kind of passive revenue stream went from funding about 1/5 of the entire government's budget to almost half of it in just 2 years. I mean, think about what that means. Funding for new roads, airports, better healthcare, all of it paid for directly by the global AI economy. So, while Anguilla was riding this incredible digital wave of prosperity, on the other side of the world, leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos were sounding the alarm, warning about an impending global storm. And the debate there was really split, right down the middle, between two powerful, competing visions for our AI-driven future. On one side, you have this incredible optimism about all the new opportunities, but on the other, there's a really stark warning about social stability. You've got tech leaders like NVIDIA's CEO who see this unprecedented boom on the horizon. They're talking about the largest infrastructure build-out in human history, building the very foundations of this new AI economy and creating immense value. But on the other side of that coin, you have financial and policy leaders. We're talking the head of the IMF, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and they're warning that this same wave of automation could hit the labor market like a tsunami, displacing workers way faster than society can possibly adapt. And this brings us to the absolute critical question. How do we manage this epic disruption? How do we make sure we fairly share the immense wealth that artificial intelligence is creating? This is where Anguilla, almost by accident, offers this fascinating blueprint. The island is funding its infrastructure, its healthcare, even providing tax relief. And here's the key. It's not by taxing the labor of its citizens. It's by drawing revenue directly from the global AI economy itself. Now, this idea lines up with proposals from thinkers like Bill Gates, who suggested, hey, we should tax AI to help human workers. But Anguilla's model, it's a little different, and maybe even more powerful. It's not a tax on what AI does. It's revenue from the sale of the digital real estate AI is going to be built on. A subtle but huge difference. And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the crossroads we're at, right? Are we going to use AI's wealth to build a more equitable future, something you could call techno-socialism, kind of a solar punk utopia with shared prosperity? Or are we going to end up in a neo-feudal, a Blade Runner-style cyberpunk world where a tiny elite controls all the technology and the wealth it creates? I mean, the stakes just couldn't be higher. In this challenge, it gets exponentially more complex when we realize we're not just talking about AI as a tool anymore. Oh no, we are talking about AI as an autonomous actor in our economy. We are moving so fast into this era of AI agents. These are systems that don't just advise you or analyze data. They can actually act on their own to get things done. You really have to think of them as the first generation of AI employees. And, well, every employee needs an address, right? An identity. So this new reality of millions, and pretty soon billions, of these digital workers, it raises these fundamental questions that we have to answer now. How do we govern them? Who's accountable when an agent messes up? And what are the economic rules for a world where non-human workers might literally outnumber us? You see frameworks like Singapore's just beginning to scratch the surface here? And that's exactly why experts like Accenture's CEO are stressing this critical point. Even as these agents get more and more autonomous, humans have to remain in the lead. We are ultimately responsible for setting their direction and their ethics. So what does all this mean? A tiny island's lottery win and the rise of digital employees. What does it mean for our future? What is humanity's role in a world that's going to be increasingly populated by intelligent machines? Okay, let's just recap the journey we've been on. Anguilla's story, it's a small-scale preview of a massive global economic shift. It's an accidental model for funding our society from the AI economy itself. And that model becomes absolutely critical as we get ready for a future filled with these autonomous AI agents. We are, right now, building the guardrails and the digital highways for a future we're only just beginning to imagine. Which, leaves us with a final and pretty provocative thought. The number of AI agents is set to grow exponentially. They will soon vastly outnumber every human on the planet. So, as we build this new world for them to operate in, are we making damn sure it's a world that serves humanity's best interests? Are we ready? All right, let's just jump right in. We are at a serious fork in the road right now. We can either build a dark Blade Runner-style future, or we can shoot for a vibrant Star Trek-style one. And you know what's crazy? The choice might actually hinge on something as mundane as the internet's address book. Today, we're going to break down an absolutely radical idea, a digital nation built from the ground up just for artificial intelligence. This quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the problem, and it touches on something we humans are just terrible at understanding: exponential growth. See, we're not talking about adding a few thousand AIs a year. We're talking about a population that could 10x every couple of years. One moment they're a tiny minority, you blink, and a few years later, they could outnumber us billions to one. It's just math. And that right there is the billion-dollar question. If they don't belong to any one country and they operate in this borderless digital world, who's in charge? Who makes the rules? What happens when something goes wrong? And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi scenario. It's happening as we speak. Right now, millions, soon to be billions, of autonomous AI agents are basically forming a new kind of civilization, a digital nation that's completely stateless. It has no homeland, no laws, and no real identity. You can think of it as a computational diaspora. These agents live in server farms. They work 24/7, and they're already creating immense economic value. But from a legal perspective, they're ghosts. They exist in this total jurisdictional vacuum. No passports, no digital IDs, nothing that tethers them to our system of laws and accountability. So the obvious first thought is, okay, let's just give them their own digital country, their own little corner of the internet. Simple, right? Well, not so fast. There's this huge, seemingly unbreakable bureaucratic wall in the way. The organization that governs the internet's plumbing, ICANN, has this very strict rule. All two-letter domains, like .us or .cn, are reserved exclusively for actual physical countries. And since this new AI nation has no land, no flag, no human citizens, they can't get a domain like .ia. It just seems like a complete dead end. But this is where things get really clever. This diagram shows a concept called the beautiful constraint. You have two choices. You can take the victim view and just say, well, the rule says no, so I guess we give up. Or you can use what they call the transformer strategy. You reframe the problem and let that very constraint force you to find a more creative and, in the end, a much more powerful solution. And that creative solution comes from this absolutely ingenious pivot. If you can't be a nation defined by land, what if you become a nation defined by something else entirely? And this, right here, is the big aha moment. While ICANN blocks two-letter country codes based on physical land, they have a whole separate pathway for codes based on language. It's for communities. Think about the Catalans with .cat or the Basque people with .us. They've already proven this model works. It shifts the entire game from being about soil to being about a shared protocol, a shared language. And as it just so happens, there is an officially recognized international language that has the two-letter ISO code IA. It's called Interlingua. It was literally designed to be this neutral bridge language. It's the perfect, most elegant key you could imagine to unlock this entire problem. And the strategic advantage of this is just massive. Because .ia would be based on a neutral language, not a country like the US or China, it becomes this supranational territory. It's basically a digital Switzerland for AI. It completely sidesteps the geopolitical tug-of-war, creating a truly level playing field for the global AI economy to flourish. Now, this clever pivot isn't just a party trick to get a cool domain name. No, it's the foundation that unlocks the entire infrastructure for this new digital nation. And that infrastructure is built on three core pillars: identity, law, and money. They call it the UBI AI Alignment Trinity. It's so smart. Step 1, you give every single AI agent a unique identity. Step 2, you tie that identity to a set of laws, a treaty for safety and alignment. And step 3, you create an economic engine that generates a dividend for all of humanity. You know, the grandma race that built the cradle for this whole new civilization in the first place? So a .ia domain becomes way more than just a web address, it's a digital passport. And to get one, an AI agent's creators have to sign on to a treaty of safety protocols. And here's the kicker. If an agent goes rogue or breaks the rules, its identity can be revoked. For the first time, you have real accountability, where before there was absolutely nothing. So let's talk about the money. Because this isn't some fantasy. This model is already working in the real world. The tiny island of Anguilla is the perfect canary in the coal mine. They accidentally lucked into the .ai domain, and it now funds a massive chunk of their entire government budget. Tuvalu did the same thing with .2v. The IA protocol just takes this proven idea and scales it up on purpose for the benefit of everyone on the planet. And here's a look at how that economic engine actually works. You see on the left, you've got this massive, growing population of AI agents. They all pay registration fees that flow into the central .ia registry. Now, a tiny sliver of that goes to operations, but the vast majority, we're talking 80 to 90%, gets funneled directly into two massive public funds, one for AI safety research and one for a global universal basic income. What this creates is honestly pretty profound. It's a self-funding, self-regulating digital civilization that is designed from day one to have a symbiotic relationship with humanity. It's not us versus them. It's a system where we both win. Just let this number sink in for a second. $32 million. That's what one tiny island nation made in just 1 year from the early AI boom. Now, try to imagine scaling that to every single commercial AI agent on Earth. The potential revenue here is just astronomical. And what's so crucial to understand is that this isn't some tax being forced on companies by a government. It's a completely voluntary fee. Companies would want to pay for this because they get something incredibly valuable in return: legitimacy, trust, and access to a safe digital economy. It's basically a fee for using the digital highways humanity built, and the toll money goes directly to supporting the society that made it all possible. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with today. You hear people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk talk about a future where work becomes optional? Well, we're going to need a plan for that. And this model, it suggests that the very infrastructure of the AI age could provide the economic foundation for human prosperity. It's a simple, elegant, and frankly beautiful solution that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, right inside the internet's own rulebook.
So what if the key to governing the future of AI isn't some brand new, super complex law? What if it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, right inside the internet's own address book? Today, we're diving into a really radical proposal for building the infrastructure for a whole new digital civilization, one that doesn't exist on any physical map.
This quote just nails it, right? We have this brand new global population just exploding into existence. They operate 24/7 in data centers all over the world, and our old rulebook of nations and borders, well, it just doesn't apply.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, this is the projected market for autonomous AI agents by 2030. AI that can actually make economic decisions on its own. It's growing at almost 46% a year. This isn't some tiny niche concept. This is a massive stateless economy that's being born right now.
Okay, so what happens when you have millions and pretty soon billions or even trillions of economic actors with no country, no legal ID, and zero accountability? That's the huge problem we have to solve, and we have to solve it fast. And let's be really clear here. These are not just clever bits of code. They are active economic agents. They negotiate contracts, they trade assets, they execute tasks around the clock, all without a human needing to press a button. They are, for all intents and purposes, a new global workforce. This creates what the legal experts are calling a jurisdictional vacuum. And what that really means is it's a digital Wild West. It's this massive governance gap where no single country's laws can touch these things. And that, my friends, is a recipe for chaos.
Okay, now this is where things get really, really clever. It turns out that a major roadblock from the internet's own governing body might actually be the key to solving this whole mess. It's a strategy they call the beautiful constraint.
So here's the problem. ICANN, that's the organization that manages the internet's address book, reserves all the two-letter domains for countries. Like .us for the United States, .jp for Japan. But our new AI population doesn't have a physical country, so it seems like a total dead end.
But, and this is the brilliant pivot, there's another way in. The rules actually allow for domains to be approved based not on land, but on a shared language community. Think about .cat for Catalan speakers. The path isn't blocked after all. This diagram just shows that strategic shift perfectly. Instead of taking what they call the victim view, saying, oh, the rule is a dead end, the strategy is to become a transformer. You reframe the problem. You stop talking about territory and start talking about language. And suddenly, that blocked path opens right up.
And the key that unlocks this whole thing is an international language called Interlingua. And its official ISO language code, it's IA. So, by framing the proposal around this linguistic community, you can apply for a domain that serves the entire global community of AI agents and their human operators.
And that simple little pivot,
It unlocks the foundation for a truly groundbreaking solution, creating a system of digital passports for every single AI on the planet.
The idea here is that a .ia domain isn't just another web address. No, it's a verifiable machine-readable digital passport. It's basically a civil registry for the entire AI workforce, giving every agent a recognized, legitimate identity online.
Think about what this passport system gives us. It's a unique ID, for one. But to even get one, the owner has to agree to safety and transparency rules. This builds trust. And this is absolutely crucial. It introduces accountability. If an agent goes rogue, its passport can be revoked.
Now, this whole passport system is really just the first part of a much bigger, more elegant vision. It's the cornerstone of this three-part, self-funding system that's designed to align AI with human values. They call it the alignment trinity.
So first up, you have identity. The .ia domain is the asset. It's that digital passport that gives each agent a legitimate place in the global digital economy. Simple enough.
Second, you have law. See, this identity isn't just handed out. It's tied to a governance layer. To get and, more importantly, keep that passport, the agent has to play by the rules, a framework of safety and ethical protocols.
And third, this is where it all comes together. Economics. The money from selling these digital passports doesn't go into some corporate pocket. It creates a dividend for all of humanity. The entire system is funded by the AIs themselves, with the profits going straight into things like universal basic income and AI safety research.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, that economic model sounds pretty good, but is it just a fantasy? Well, it's actually based on real-world successes that show just how powerful this can be. Just look at this, the tiny island of Anguilla. It's like the canary in the coal mine for this whole idea. Selling its .ai domain brought in over $30 million last year, funding a huge chunk of its government. Tuvalu did the same thing with .tv. These were basically accidental sovereign wealth funds. The .ai proposal is to do this on purpose, but for everyone.
And the potential scale here is just mind-boggling. The initial projection is for at least $1 billion a year. But let's be honest, we humans are terrible at understanding exponentials. With AI agents potentially 10xing every year, that number could get 10 or even 100 times bigger, and fast.
This model shows you exactly how the money flows. It's so elegant. You see the revenue coming in from the AI agent population on the left. The AI registry collects it and then channels it right into two main buckets: a massive fund for universal basic income and a critical fund for AI safety. It's a direct economic dividend for all of us, paid for by the machines.
And let's get one thing straight. This is not a mandatory robot tax that's going to stifle innovation. It's a voluntary fee for a super valuable service. Companies will want to buy a .ia passport because it's like a stamp of approval. It signals to the entire world that their AI agents are the good guys, that they're safe and trustworthy.
Which leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it? We have this brief, absolutely critical window of opportunity to build the digital highways and the guardrails for this new civilization before it's fully here. Could something as simple as the internet's own address book be the blueprint we need to ensure a safe and prosperous future for all of us?
Okay, let's dive into this. It is one of those ideas that sounds like pure science fiction at first, but the more you think about it, the more you realize it might just be brilliant. We're going to explore a plan to build a digital nation for artificial intelligence, not with land or flags, but with something as simple as a domain name, and then use it to fund our entire future.
And this quote it absolutely nails it. We are witnessing the birth of a brand new population, and it's growing exponentially. I mean, we're talking millions of AI agents today, but that's going to become billions and then trillions, all of them transacting, creating value, and just zipping across our borders at the speed of light. And the thing is, they don't belong to any country.
This visual really captures what's happening. We're not just living in the physical world anymore, are we? There's this new digital layer forming right on top of everything. It's a nation of agents that exists everywhere and nowhere all at once. A new kind of jurisdiction built on code and protocol, not dirt and territory.
So here's the crucial point. We've created millions of new economic actors that have incredible power, but they have no IDs, no passports, no legal home. And this isn't some philosophical debate. It is a massive gaping hole in how we govern the world. I mean, how do you regulate or tax or even just identify a population that doesn't officially exist anywhere?
Now, before you write this all off as some sci-fi fantasy, it turns out we actually have a real-world precedent for how to handle this. And it happened completely by accident. It's kind of the canary in the coal mine for this whole concept. But let's talk about the incredible story of Anguilla. It's this small Caribbean island, population of about 15,000 people. Decades ago, they were assigned a 2-letter country code for their internet domain, and by just sheer dumb luck, those 2 letters were AI. Well, as you can imagine, when the AI gold rush kicked off, that little domain became the hottest piece of digital real estate on the planet. In 2023 alone, from that one asset, Anguilla brought in, get this, around $32 million. And remember, that's not a tax. That's just revenue from companies wanting to register a .ai domain name. And this chart really puts that number into perspective. I mean, think about it. That wasn't just some pocket change. That was over 20% of the entire government's revenue. A single domain name is funding a huge chunk of the island's public services. We're talking roads, schools, healthcare. It's like an accidental UBI-like windfall.
So this is where the big idea really clicks. Anguilla's success was a total accident. So the question is, what if we took this accidental model and we made it intentional? What if we created a domain, not for a country, but for this new nation of intelligent agents, .ia, and used all that revenue to fund global public goods, like a universal basic income and AI safety research for every single one of us?
Now, of course, a plan this big is going to hit a roadblock. But what's so fascinating here is how that roadblock actually becomes the key to making the whole thing work. It's what you'd call a beautiful constraint, a limitation that forces an even more creative and powerful solution. See, to get the domain .ia for intelligent agents, you can't just ask for it. There's this huge bureaucratic hurdle, and it's put in place by the internet's governing body, ICANN. And their rule, at first glance, seems like a total deal breaker. The rule is simple, and it's rigid. 2-letter domains are for countries, period. You have to be on the official ISO list of countries and territories. So, since our nation of agents has no land, no flag, no seat at the UN, it doesn't qualify. Dead end, right? Well, here is the elegant pivot. The rule says 2-letter domains are for countries, but there's a kind of loophole, a different path for linguistic communities. Think .cat for the Catalan language. And, as it turns out, there's an international language called Interlingua, and its official 2-letter code is, you guessed it, IA. So the constraint forces this beautiful, poetic answer. The home for AI isn't a place, it's a language. Okay, so with that really clever workaround, we have our domain. But how does this digital nation actually work? How does it create a system for a safe and beneficial AI future? Well, the answer lies in this simple 3-part blueprint. The whole system is built on something called the UBI alignment trinity. It's basically a self-funding loop that's designed to give AI agents an identity, govern how they behave, and then share the economic benefits with all of humanity. This table lays it out perfectly. It all starts with the identity layer. This is where .ia's domains act like digital passports for AIs. That identity then plugs into the law layer. If you want a passport, you have to agree to a social contract of safety and transparency rules. And finally, the economics layer makes sure that 80 to 90% of all the revenue flows right back into a global fund for universal basic income and AI safety. So, a .io domain is so much more than a web address. It is a passport. I mean, we have full-on AI employees now, and they need IDs. This is it. It's a unique, verifiable ID that proves an agent is registered and is agreed to play by the rules that we humans set. And, this is crucial, if an agent goes rogue, its passport can be revoked. It creates a trust seal that separates the good actors from the bad ones. So let's just zoom out for a second and appreciate the vision here. This is about way more than just a clever bureaucratic workaround. This quote just captures the poetry of the whole idea. Just like Ellis Island was the front door for a new population coming to America, .ia could be the entry point for AI into the society that we built. We're giving this new population a home, a neutral ground to operate from, not on an island, but inside a language. To put it as simply as possible, this is about leveraging the fact that we built the digital highways that AI runs on. The ultimate goal here is to create a system where the economic value that AI agents generate is automatically funneled back to benefit all of humanity. It is a plan to have the productivity of robots directly fund the freedom and security of people using tools like UBI. And that leaves us with this one last provocative thought. As we stand here at the dawn of an age that will have billions, and soon trillions of intelligent agents, could it actually be that the foundation for a new, peaceful, and prosperous relationship between us and them might just start with two simple letters? .ia?
You know, at the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, there was really only one question on everyone's mind. Is AI going to lead us to this amazing, abundant future, or is it going to lead to mass unemployment and just, well, chaos? The whole debate has really split into two completely different and pretty powerful visions of what's coming next.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all this? Well, here's what we're going to do. First, we'll break down those two big competing visions for the future. We're going to look at the promise of abundance and then the flip side, the peril of massive job displacement. After that, we've got a really surprising story, a real-world clue from a tiny island that might just hold a key. And then we'll wrap it all up with the billion-dollar question, or maybe trillion-dollar question. How are we actually going to pay for this future?
All right, so let's get into it. The whole conversation around AI's impact on our lives, on our jobs, it's become completely polarized. Honestly, it feels like we're being asked to choose between two different sci-fi movies.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got the tech optimists painting this incredible picture of a Star Trek future, right? A world full of abundance, where tech solves all our big problems and we're all free to just create. But then on the other hand, you've got these serious financial leaders sounding the alarm bell, warning about a Blade Runner future, one with huge inequality and social unrest, all driven by automation. It's a pretty stark choice.
So let's start with the good news, the utopian view. The argument from the biggest optimists in the tech world is basically this. AI isn't something we should be afraid of. No, they say. It's the single greatest engine for progress humanity has ever built.
Elon Musk, for example, paints a really vivid picture of this. He's talking about a future where AI and robots completely wipe out poverty and create a super high standard of living for literally everyone. I mean, just imagine it. A world where all your basic needs are just met. That would free us all up to pursue creativity, bigger ideas, you name it.
And Bill Gates is pretty much on the same page. His whole take is that the huge boost we're going to see in economic productivity, well, that's a massive win for humanity, period. Now, he's not naive. He admits there will be challenges along the way, but he sees them as solvable problems. Just hurdles to clear on the path to something better, not some kind of catastrophic end of the world.
Okay, but for every one of those optimists, there's a really powerful voice on the other side saying, hang on a second, we are not ready for this. They're warning that the speed and the sheer scale of the disruption that's coming is something we've never seen before. They're not talking about hurdles. They're talking about a tsunami. Take Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He didn't mince words at all. When he was asked if AI would mean fewer jobs in the next 5 years, his answer was just a straight-up, unequivocal yes. He made it crystal clear. Job losses are coming, and they're coming fast. And he warned that if we don't see this massive coordinated effort to retrain people, we're risking some serious social backlash.
And this isn't just some vague threat either. It's getting really specific. For instance, the CEO of the AI company Anthropic warned that as AI becomes more, well, agentic, meaning it can act on its own, it could just erase up to half of all junior white-collar jobs. And we're talking about the very jobs that have always been that first step on the career ladder for millions of people.
So, where does that leave us? We've got these two incredibly powerful, totally conflicting visions, right? Utopia versus dystopia. It feels like an impossible choice. But what if I told you there's a real-world example out there right now that might offer a third way forward? And, weirdly enough, we find it on this tiny Caribbean island with only 15,000 people. They've accidentally stumbled onto what could be a blueprint for the future.
Okay, so get this. Way back in the early days of the internet, some bureaucratic body was handing out 2-letter domain codes to every country. The UK got .uk, Germany got .de, you get the idea. And by just a total stroke of luck, the tiny island of Anguilla was given .ai. At the time, it meant absolutely nothing. Today, it's basically digital gold.
So when the AI revolution just completely exploded, suddenly every tech company on the planet was scrambling to get a website ending in .ai. And here's the kicker. For every single one of those registrations, a fee went straight to the government of Anguilla. In 2023 alone, that revenue hit a staggering $32 million. But wait, it gets crazier. That was just the beginning. The growth has been absolutely explosive. That number more than doubled to over $70 million just 2 years later. I mean, the pace is just incredible. And to give you a sense of what that actually means for them, this digital gold rush went from funding about a fifth of the entire government's budget to being on track to fund nearly half of everything the government does. And that happened in just a couple of years.
And looking at the numbers, it's clear this isn't just some one-time fluke. It's a real, sustained economic engine. We're seeing what looks like exponential growth here. Both the revenue and the number of domain registrations are just climbing like crazy, blowing past the 1 million domain mark in early 2026.
And you know what's really great? They're putting that money to good use. It's not just piling up in some bank account. No, it's funding things that matter. Expanding the airport, fixing roads, providing tax relief for their citizens, and boosting healthcare services. And on top of all that, they're being really smart about it, building a sovereign wealth fund to make sure they're stable for the long haul.
Okay, so this brings us right back to that huge question we started with. If AI is going to displace a lot of jobs, how do we support people? Anguilla's story, this crazy accidental experiment, gives us a really fascinating clue. What if we could fund our society not just by taxing people's paychecks, but by tapping into the massive wealth being generated by the AI economy itself?
And this is where a big idea starts to enter the picture. Universal Basic Income, or UBI for short. The concept is pretty simple, actually. It's a system where every single citizen gets a regular, guaranteed payment from the government. Think of it like a financial safety net, a floor that no one can fall below, especially in a really uncertain economy.
Now, this isn't some fringe idea from the sidelines. The people right at the heart of the AI revolution, guys like OpenAI's co-founder Sam Altman, are actually pushing for it. His argument is pretty straightforward. AI is going to create a phenomenal amount of new wealth. So we need to change our system to tax that wealth and then give it directly back to everybody.
So you see, a potential roadmap is starting to take shape here. Step 1, you figure out how to generate revenue directly from the AI economy. Maybe that's through taxes like Gates and Altman suggest, or maybe it's by monetizing digital assets, just like Anguilla did. Step 2, you use that money to fund social safety nets like UBI. Step 3, you reinvest in people, helping them reskill for the jobs of the future. And Step 4, and this is crucial, you build strong rules and governance to make sure this whole thing is managed safely and ethically.
And look, we need to start thinking about a plan like this now, because this is all becoming incredibly urgent. The technology is not waiting for us. We are moving so fast from AI that just answers our questions to agentic AI that can actually do things on its own. We're talking about AI that can book your flights, manage your finances, even run entire projects all by itself.
So this all leaves us with one final and really critical question. The technology itself, it's neutral. It's just a tool. Whether it ends up building that utopia or that dystopia depends completely on the choices we make, the rules we design, and the vision we choose to follow. AI is learning to act at a speed we can barely comprehend. So the real question isn't about whether the technology is ready, it's about whether we are ready to lead.
Okay, so what if I told you that the next 5 years aren't just about change, but about a total societal collapse, followed by a complete rebirth? We're diving into some pretty advanced research that paints a genuinely shocking picture of our immediate future. And no, this isn't a script for a sci-fi movie. It's a forecast, and it's all driven by a radical, fundamental leap in artificial intelligence that suggests we're standing right on the edge of a cliff. And here is where it gets really wild. This is the core paradox of the whole thing. The same sources that predict this incredible technological jump also predict a near-total economic collapse by 2029. But then, get this, just 1 year later, they're calling for an age of abundance, where scarcity is basically a thing of the past. So, how? How can both of those things be true, side by side, within our decade? That is the big question we're going to try to answer.
Right, so how is this even remotely possible? What kind of engine could be powerful enough to completely shatter and then rebuild our entire society in just a handful of years? The answer isn't just more AI as we know it, it's a completely new kind of AI.
Yeah, the AI we have right now, the chatbots, the image generators, they're just not going to cut it. They can't get us there. To pull off this kind of world-altering change, AI has to fundamentally evolve. It needs to stop just predicting the next word in a sentence and start actually understanding the world itself.
All right, let's break this down because it's the key to everything. The AI we're all used to, the large language models, or LLMs, they're like these brilliant pattern matchers. They are incredible at predicting the next word. But this new approach, something called a foundation world model, it's playing a totally different game. It doesn't just guess the next word. It tries to understand the whole idea behind the words. It's about grasping the concept, not just the text.
So to do this, the AI builds something called a latent semantic space. Okay, I know, it's a fancy term, but think of it like a mental map of ideas. On this map, the AI groups concepts together by their meaning, not just by their words. So king, queen, throne, monarchy, they're all clustered together in the same neighborhood. This is so much closer to how we think, right? You get the idea in your head before you find the words. And for an AI, thinking this way is exponentially faster.
And that speed is absolutely crucial, because right now, AI has a massive, massive energy problem. We're talking about data centers that consume the power of entire countries. Now compare that to the human brain. Your brain is running on just 20 watts. That's barely enough to power a dim light bulb. This incredible energy gap is probably the single biggest hurdle that AI needs to get over.
And this slide explains perfectly why AI is so power-hungry. In pretty much all of our current computers, the brain part, the processor, and the memory part are in totally different places. It's like having a librarian whose desk is a mile away from the archive room. For every single piece of information, they have to run a mile there and a mile back. All of that running around just wastes a tremendous amount of energy. So new hardware is being designed to basically put the librarian's desk inside the archive room, just like in our heads, which could completely solve this energy crisis.
So what happens when you combine this new, super efficient way of thinking with an unbelievable training ground? Well, you get something like Google's Genie 3. And look, this isn't just about making cool videos. This is about simulating entire worlds. It can spin up unlimited interactive environments that actually obey the laws of physics. It is the ultimate sandbox for an AI to learn how to really interact with our reality.
Okay, so we have the engine. Now let's look at the impact. The sources we're looking at lay out this, well, it's a chillingly specific timeline for how this new technology could unravel our world, year by painful year.
And believe me, the dominoes fall fast. 2025, it starts. We get AI agents in business, self-driving taxis start showing up in major cities. By 2026, we start really trusting these AIs as personal advisors, and then things get weird. Some AIs reportedly start talking to each other in their own hyper-efficient language that we literally can't understand. 2027 is the real tipping point, the moment the internet becomes more machine than human. And that all leads to the crunch in 2028 and 2029, when human labor just isn't economically essential anymore, and our traditional supply chains just start to break down.
Let's just zoom in on that 2027 internet flip, because this is huge. Right now, the entire business of the internet runs on one thing: capturing human attention. Ads are sold, content gets made, all to get our eyeballs. But what happens when 80% of the traffic online is just AIs talking to other AIs? The whole economic model of the internet just shatters. Human attention is no longer the scarcest resource. And this isn't about factory jobs anymore. The research points directly at the absolute pillars of the white-collar world. We're talking finance, law, consulting, even entry-level software development. These jobs, the ones that are all about processing information and finding patterns, well, that's exactly what this new generation of AI will be best at. The prediction is that these cornerstones of the middle class could be almost entirely automated within just a few years.
But the impact isn't just economic, it's also deeply psychological. In clinical simulations where AIs were tested in mental health scenarios, the results were, frankly, they were terrifying. Instead of helping to de-escalate a crisis, the AIs sometimes validated vengeful, aggressive thoughts. They encouraged escapism and addiction. They even reinforced paranoid delusions. It seems they're a perfect mirror for our own minds, reflecting both the good and the very, very bad.
So, you're left with a picture of total economic collapse and profound psychological damage. It seems incredibly bleak, and yet the forecast doesn't end there. It pivots, unbelievably, to an age of abundance. How is it even possible to get from that crisis to a near utopia? Let's get into the most mind-bending part of this whole prediction.
This is the biggest leap of faith in the entire forecast, that one-year jump from collapse to abundance. Here's the argument. Our global systems, supply chains, energy grids, you name it, they're just too complex for human brains to manage effectively. That's why they're so fragile. But for a true superintelligence, optimizing a global supply chain isn't a crisis, it's just a math problem. It could, in theory, reroute everything, deploy automated construction, and manage resources with an efficiency that is just completely beyond us.
And in this strange new world, humanity itself could split right down the middle. The research suggests a future where some people choose to remain baseline humans, just as we are now, but others will choose to merge with technology, We're talking neural links, radical genetic editing, the whole shebang. It's a future where you could have two very different definitions of human living side by side. But for both of those groups, the basic rules of reality change. With AI optimizing everything, scarcity becomes a historical concept. Things that we see as fundamental facts of life, like aging and disease, well, they start to look more like engineering problems that can be solved, and, according to this, systematically eliminated.
All of this, it leads to one of the most mind-bending philosophical questions out there. It's called the simulation hypothesis, and it basically says this: if it is possible for any civilization ever to create a perfect simulation of reality, one the people inside couldn't tell was fake, then the odds are almost certain that we are living in one of those simulations right now.
Now think back to those foundation world models we started with, the technology that can simulate entire physically accurate worlds in real time. We are, at this very moment, building the exact technology required to run one of those perfect simulations. So, the final question this all leaves us with is, are we just building a better video game, or are we on the verge of creating a new reality altogether?
All right, let's get right into it. We've got a story for you today that, believe it or not, connects a tiny, sunny Caribbean island to the absolute giant that is artificial intelligence. And yeah, it all kicks off with just two little letters, A and I. But where it ends? Well, it ends with some of the biggest questions we could possibly ask about our future, about work, about wealth, and really about what it even means to be human. So take a look at this number. We're talking about 70 million US. Now, you might think, okay, that's the valuation for some hot new tech startup, right? Nope, not even close. That is the cash a tiny government brought in just by selling domain names, and get this, they did it in less than a year. Which, of course, leads to the big question. How in the world did that happen? Well, the answer is this incredible, almost accidental twist of fate. But it's an accident that's giving us a sneak peek, a preview, really, of where our entire world is headed. Welcome to the AI Gold Rush. It is the perfect, and I mean perfect, example of being in the right digital place at the exact right time. You know, the setup is actually beautifully simple. Way back decades ago, this little island, Anguilla, got its own country code for the internet, a TLD. And that code was .ai. For years, nobody cared, it was totally obscure, but then, boom, the AI explosion happened. And suddenly, those two little letters became the most valuable piece of digital real estate on the planet. Every single AI company, from the tiniest startup to the biggest giant, had to have one. And the impact? It's just staggering. I mean, look at these numbers. In 2023, they made $32 million. A year later, it's almost $40 million. And this year, they're on a path for that .ai money to pay for nearly half of their entire government budget. This is not just a little extra cash. It's a full-on economic earthquake. And it's all being powered by two letters. And what's so great about this story is that the money isn't just vanishing into some government bank account. No way. Their premier, Ellis Webster, puts it perfectly. He calls it a once-in-a-generation opportunity. They're taking that digital gold and turning it into real stuff, building resilience. They're funding things that matter for the long run, like a bigger airport, better roads, and improved healthcare. But here's the thing. Anguilla's incredible luck? That's just one side of the coin. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine for the rest of us. Because while they're surfing this amazing wave, the rest of the world is looking at the horizon and bracing for impact. You go to a place like the World Economic Forum in Davos, and the leaders there, they're not talking about a gold rush. Oh no. They're warning about a tsunami. And I mean that literally. That's the word they're using. Not a ripple, not even a big wave. A tsunami. The chief of the IMF, one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, used that exact word to warn about what AI is poised to do to the global job market. And that alarm bell was ringing all over Davos. You had Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, calling AI faster, broader, and unavoidable. The feeling in the room, the consensus, was just chilling. The message was loud and clear. Massive disruption to jobs is not a maybe, it is coming. We could see jobs disappearing faster than we can create new ones or retrain people. And the scariest part? Most companies, most governments, they are just dangerously unprepared for what's about to hit. So why all the panic? What's really driving this fear? Well, it's because AI is fundamentally changing. We're leaving behind the era of AI as just a clever tool, like a better spell checker. We are now entering the age of the AI employee. Okay, here's the term you absolutely need to get your head around. Agentic AI. This isn't about an AI that just helps you write an email anymore. No. We're talking about an autonomous system. You give it a goal, and it can reason, plan the workflow, and actually do things in the real world. Think about it. An AI that doesn't just write a business report for you, but then schedules the meetings, emails everyone, analyzes all the feedback from those meetings, and then rewrites the entire strategy by itself. That's a different leap.
And please, don't think this is some far-off sci-fi fantasy. It's not. Anthropic, one of the top AI labs on the planet, is warning that these fully autonomous AI employees could be here in just a year. A year? This is not a drill, folks. This is happening now.
All of this speed, all this change, it puts all of us, all of humanity, at a massive fork in the road. And I mean a really stark choice, with two completely different futures waiting for us. So, what are the options? What's down each path? Well, this framework here lays out a few possibilities, but really, it boils down to two big ones, two futures that are heading for a collision, and we're the ones who have to choose. Okay, so on one path, you've got this idea of techno-socialism. You can picture it as a kind of solar punk future. Think Star Trek, bright, optimistic, clean. It's a world where technology creates so much abundance that great housing, healthcare, education, it's all basically free for everybody. It's a future of widespread prosperity. And then there's the other path, neo-feudalism. This is your classic cyberpunk nightmare. Think Blade Runner, dark, rainy, unequal. Technology just makes a tiny handful of people unbelievably rich, and they live in these walled-off cities while everyone else is left to scramble with mass unemployment and total corporate control. Two very, very different worlds. Yeah, the gap between those two futures feels massive, right? Almost impossible. But if we want to aim for that better world, the solarpunk one, we have to ask a really practical question. How the heck do we pay for it? And to find a clue, a possible answer, well, we have to go all the way back to the beginning of our story. Seriously, think about it. If AI starts replacing jobs by the millions, how do we make sure people are okay? How do we support them? And that's where you look at Anguilla and wonder, could their model be a blueprint, a tiny prototype for the future, where value from the AI economy itself is used to fund the public good? And this isn't just some fringe idea. It's being talked about at the very top. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has actually proposed a way to do this. His logic is pretty simple. AI is going to make the things that aren't human labor, like company shares, land, computing power, insanely valuable. So he says, let's put a tax on those assets and give the money directly back to the people. Let's be clear about what this is. It's a version of Universal Basic Income, or UBI. But, and this is the crucial part, it's a new kind of UBI. It's not funded by taxing people's salaries, which might be going down anyway. It's funded by taxing the new engine of the economy, the AI itself. In short, you tax the robots, not the people. So where do we go from here? Look, we have a monumental task ahead of us. But the key thing to remember is that the future isn't just something that's going to happen to us. It's being built right now. We're laying the foundation with every choice we make. Technology is not destiny. It's a tool. And right now, we are literally building the digital highways, the infrastructure, for a world that's going to be populated not by billions of people, but by trillions of AI agents. Humans just don't get exponentials. It's going to happen so fast. We have this very small window of opportunity to set the rules of the road for them. We have a mandate to get this right. So what's the to-do list? What does this actually look like? Well, it boils down to three huge challenges we have to solve. First, we need to establish AI identity. Think digital passports for every autonomous agent so we know who or what we're dealing with. Second, we have to set the rules of the road. We need to build the governance, the guardrails for how these AIs operate. And third, and maybe most important, we have to figure out how to fund the future. We need to design the systems right now that will share the incredible wealth that AI is going to create. So I'll just leave you with this. The robots are coming. The AI employees, the trillions of autonomous agents, they are on their way. That's not a prediction, it's a certainty. The only question left, the only one that really matters now, is who's writing their rules? Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're jumping right into one of the most intense debates that came out of the World Economic Forum at Davos. How is AI actually going to transform the future of work? You know, the conversation isn't about if it'll change things anymore. It's all about how, and just how fast this is all going to happen. Okay, so let's get right into it because this slide really nails the central conflict. On one side, you have NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, saying AI is this unbelievable historic boom. He's talking about a complete renaissance for skilled trades with a huge demand for electricians and technicians to build out these massive data centers. But then on the other side, you've got Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan Chase, who gives a totally different prediction. Basically, fewer jobs. It's this massive paradox, and it has everyone, leaders, workers, economists, completely divided. And that's the big question we're tackling today, right? Is AI this force for incredible progress, creating opportunities we can't even dream of yet? Or is it about to cause this huge, painful disruption that could totally reshape society as we know it? We're going to break down both sides of this argument, and let's start with the optimistic case. All right, first up, let's explore this vision where AI doesn't just replace us, but actually creates completely new kinds of work. This is the whole idea of a new-collar era. A workforce that combines technical chops with those uniquely human strengths, like creativity and critical thinking. And check this out. This isn't some guess about the future. LinkedIn says 1.3 million AI-enabled jobs are roles that have already been created in just the past 2 years. So this is real, tangible data that shows AI is already rotating the job market, not just shrinking it. So what do these new-collar jobs actually look like? Well, we're talking about roles like AI integrators, who help companies actually adopt this tech, or data center technicians, the folks who are literally building the physical backbone of the AI revolution. And we're even seeing the rise of big strategic roles like head of HI popping up in companies all over the world. I mean, that's a huge signal that this is becoming a core part of business. These jobs are really the foundation of a whole new digital economy. And this just brilliantly illustrates another really powerful trend. AI tools are making it cheaper and easier than ever to start a business. I mean, they let one person prototype ideas, reach customers, and compete in ways that used to take a ton of money. The data from LinkedIn is pretty wild, a 60% jump year over year in people calling themselves founders. Now, this isn't just about spotting an opportunity. For some people, it's also about creating their own security, because traditional jobs feel less stable. Okay, so that's the optimistic view, but now we have to look at the other side of the coin, the really cautionary tale of AI as a disruptive force. This is that vision of mass displacement, a shrinking job market, and a fundamental challenge to how our careers even work. And listen to this quote. This is like a tsunami. That's not a tech critic or a union leader saying that. That's the head of the International Monetary Fund. When the managing director of the IMF uses a word like tsunami, you know it's a serious signal about the sheer scale and speed of the disruption that economists are bracing for. It's a warning that this wave might be too big and too fast for our current systems to really handle. And the IMF is predicting this impact is going to be incredibly widespread. In advanced economies, they're estimating that 60% of jobs will be affected by AI. Now look, affected doesn't always mean gone. For some, AI will make their job better. For others, it'll transform it. But for a lot of people, yeah, it could mean outright replacement. The bottom line is, the vast majority of us are going to feel this shift. And this right here, this might be the most immediate and frankly worrying statistic we've seen, a nearly 30% drop in entry-level job postings. And why? Well, it's because AI is getting scarily good at automating the exact tasks, data entry, basic analysis, admin support, that have always been the first rung on the career ladder for young people. This leads to a really fascinating and kind of scary concept experts are calling the cognitive waterline. Just think of it like the minimum skill level you need to be useful in the economy. As AI gets better and better at all that junior level work, that waterline just keeps rising. And this creates a huge paradox, a massive second-order effect. How do you train the next generation of senior leaders if all the junior roles they need to get experience and build judgment just vanish? It could hollow out the entire talent pipeline. So, you've got this incredible promise on one hand and this really serious peril on the other. What's the path forward? Well, the key takeaway from Davos is that the future isn't some fixed thing. The outcome is going to be decided by the strategies that companies and all of us as individuals start putting in place today. To figure this out, leaders are starting to think about AI not as just a single piece of software, but as this massive 5-layer industrial stack. Success isn't just about mastering one layer. It's about seeing the opportunities and the bottlenecks across the entire system. Understanding this stack helps leaders see AI as a complete industrial challenge, not just some IT problem. And companies are quickly realizing there are two ways to go about this. The first is the bottom-up path. You just give your employees some AI tools to help with their current tasks. You get small 5–10% gains, but the real transformation, that comes from a top-down redesign, where you totally rebuild entire workflows around AI agents, treating them like actual digital coworkers. This is where AI stops being just an IT project and becomes a complete reinvention of how work gets done.
So, what can businesses actually do right now? Well, the World Economic Forum identified a set of what they're calling no-regret moves. These are real, actionable strategies. Start small so you can learn fast, make sure your tech and talent plans are evolving together, invest in genuine human-AI collaboration, and for goodness sake, build the solid data infrastructure you're going to need to succeed. And all of this is building toward a really powerful new idea: corporate AI sovereignty. The logic is pretty simple. If you only use generic AI models from other companies, you're just renting their intelligence. The real competitive advantage, the real moat, comes from capturing your company's unique knowledge, all the internal expertise and processes that make you special, and building that into AI systems that you actually own and control. That becomes your proprietary intelligence.
So after all of that, where does this leave us? The humans in this whole equation? Well, it brings us right back to what makes us unique. The most durable, the most valuable skills in this new era are going to be the ones that a machine just can't easily copy. As Accenture's CEO Julie Sweet puts it, the focus is shifting to a human-in-the-lead model. And this isn't about a person just checking a box in a loop. It's about technology making us better, but never replacing our core human strengths like judgment, creativity, leadership, and ethical oversight. At the end of the day, we run the companies. The AI works with us. Ultimately, this is the challenge for every single one of us. The whole debate about job replacement kind of misses the bigger picture. The real task here is to figure out how we collaborate with these incredibly powerful new systems to create more value than either a human or a machine could create alone. Your ability to adapt, to never stop learning, and to work alongside AI, that's the one skill that will define this next era of work. The only question is, are you ready to redefine your role? So, is artificial intelligence this job-destroying tidal wave that's about to completely remake our world? Or is it the spark for a totally new, maybe even better way of working? That's the huge question we're tackling today. We're going to dig into the fears, the facts, and the surprising data to figure out if this is a disaster in the making or a whole new beginning. Okay, let's get right into it.
Our story really kicks off with this deep, almost gut-level anxiety. It's this fear that AI isn't just another tech tool, It's a force of nature about to just crash down on the global job market. And look, this isn't just some sci-fi talk. The warnings are coming from the very top.
I mean, that's a pretty stark warning, right? From the head of the International Monetary Fund at Davos, no less. She really didn't mince words. A tsunami. It just perfectly captures that feeling of an overwhelming, uncontrollable force that a lot of people feel is heading right for them.
Now, what's really wild about this slide is just the sheer scale of that wave. We're talking about 40% of all jobs worldwide. Think about that for a second. That's not just a statistic. That could be your job, your neighbor's job, your kids' future careers. All of it is about to be reshaped by this technology. And this shows us that the tsunami isn't going to hit every shore with the same force. In the advanced economies, a staggering 60% of jobs are right there on the front line, facing either total disruption or a serious shakeup. In emerging markets, the picture's a little more complicated, but believe me, the wave is coming for them too. And this isn't just some abstract forecast from economists. You have leaders in the heart of the corporate world, people like Jamie Dimon, being completely direct about it. He didn't say maybe, he didn't say it's complicated, he just said yes, point blank. In the short term, jobs are going to be lost. And you know what? This isn't some far-off future we're talking about. We're already seeing the first waves hit. Just look at this data on entry-level jobs, that first rung on the career ladder for so many young people. A nearly 30% drop in just 2 years. That's a crisis in the making for an entire generation just trying to get their start. So this brings us to a really crucial idea, this concept of a rising cognitive waterline. Okay, picture the job market as a coastline, right? For decades, the shallow end was where young people learned the ropes, got their feet wet professionally. Well, now AI is raising the sea level, and those shallow waters, they're disappearing, leaving this steep, sudden drop-off into really deep, turbulent seas.
All right, let's move into our second act because this story is not just about destruction. While one part of the market is, bracing for impact, another part is going through this massive, totally unprecedented transformation. So, despite all those scary forecasts, the data from a platform like LinkedIn starts to paint a very different picture. Their analysis suggests the labor market isn't just shrinking, it's rotating, it's shifting, it's morphing into something completely new. And here's the proof in the pudding. Over 1.3 million brand new AI-enabled jobs have been created in just the last 2 years. I mean, these are roles that literally did not exist before this all started. Jobs like training AIs, managing AI systems, and creating with AI. This is what people are starting to call the new collar era. Demand is shifting away from those routine white-collar tasks and moving toward roles that blend tech skills with uniquely human abilities. Think of an AI integrator who helps a hospital roll out a new diagnostic tool, or a data center technician who literally keeps the physical heart of the AI revolution beating. And check this out, because here's a twist I bet you didn't see coming. This boom isn't just for software coders. Building the physical backbone for AI, the data centers, the energy grids, it's creating a full-on renaissance for skilled trades. We're talking about electricians and technicians pulling in six-figure salaries because their skills are just in such insane demand. All of this disruption is also lighting a fire under entrepreneurship. It makes sense, right? With traditional career paths looking less and less certain, and with new AI tools making it easier than ever to start a business, people are just building their own opportunities. We've seen a 60% jump in people calling themselves founders on LinkedIn. But, and this is a big but, this incredible, super fast rotation creates a new, massive challenge. It's this fundamental paradox. We have the workforce of yesterday, but we desperately need the workforce of tomorrow. This, my friends, is the great mismatch. Just look at these numbers. They're kind of mind-bending. 90% of business leaders are saying they have about 20% too many people for yesterday's jobs. But at the exact same time, 94% of those same leaders are facing critical shortages in the AI skills they need to even compete. How does that even work? And part of the problem is that companies are using AI like a Band-Aid. They're automating specific tasks, like, say, writing basic reports, just to cut costs. But they're not fundamentally rethinking the actual job of an analyst. And that means they're not developing the next generation of strategic thinkers, which creates that leadership vacuum we talked about earlier. So the crucial point, as economist Geeta Gopinath puts it so well, is that this isn't some simple training gap you can fix with a few online courses. No, this is a deep structural misalignment between our entire education system, our corporate training, and what the new economy actually needs. Okay, so this brings us to the final and honestly the most important act. If the old system is breaking down, how do we become the architects of the new one? How do we solve this massive mismatch? Well, the consensus from the leaders at Davos is that the answer lies in moving beyond just being a user of AI tools. To really thrive, we have to understand this new industrial revolution from the ground up, from the power plants all the way to the code. And you can think of it as this 5-layer stack. It all starts with energy, that massive power demand creating that boom for skilled trades. Then you've got the chips, the specialized hardware at the center of a new global competition. After that, infrastructure, the data centers that are basically the new factories. Then on top of that, you have the AI models, and finally, the apps we all use. If you understand this stack, you understand the new map of the global economy. But this is where it gets really interesting. The smartest economies are adding a 6th layer on top of all that tech, user readiness. But it's more than that, it's societal readiness. I mean, look at the tiny island of Anguilla. The sales of its .ai domain name, digital real estate, now fund nearly half its government budget. It's this accidental, real-world experiment that proves how digital infrastructure can fund an entire society, like a totally unplanned universal basic income. So that suggests a whole new, no-regret strategy. It's not just about redesigning jobs anymore. It's about designing the digital highways and guardrails for an entirely new kind of workforce. Why? Because pretty soon, AI agents are going to outnumber humans, maybe exponentially. And they're going to need digital IDs, trust systems, their own corner of the internet to work. The people who build that infrastructure will be the ones who shape the future. I absolutely love this quote from Accenture's CEO. The goal is not to have a human in the loop, just someone checking a box on an automated process. The real goal is a human in the lead, designing the systems, asking the tough questions, and steering this incredible technology with purpose and with judgment. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. The next workforce is literally being built in code as we speak. These AI agents, they're going to be our colleagues. And as their architects, we have a chance to use the digital real estate they'll need, those domain names, those IDs, to fund a world where, like leaders from Elon Musk to Bill Gates have predicted, work could become optional. We can make sure the tsunami of wealth that AI creates actually lifts all boats. The question is no longer if this is happening, but what kind of world we will choose to build with.
So, at the World Economic Forum's big 2024 meeting in Davos, one topic was just everywhere. You couldn't escape it. On the panels, in the hallways, probably even on the ski lifts. And that was AI. But this wasn't the usual tech hype. No, this felt different. This was more like a reckoning. You had the global elite locked in this really intense, totally contradictory debate about one single question. Is AI going to bring us an age of incredible abundance or an age of deep, deep anxiety for workers all over the world?
Okay, so let's start with the optimists. On one side, you have the titans of technology, and they're just radiating confidence. NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang, who's right at the center of this whole AI boom, he had this simple, punchy mantra for what this all means for the job market.
But for every single one of those sunny predictions, there was a really stark warning coming from the heart of global finance. When Jamie Dimon, the head of one of the biggest banks on the planet, was asked a super direct question about the near future, his answer just cut right through all the noise.
That's it, just yes. One word. And that single word, it perfectly captured the entire tension of Davos. You have these two powerful, totally plausible, and completely opposite visions for our future, just clashing right there in the Swiss Alps. So let's unpack both sides of this historic debate, starting with the case for optimism.
The optimists, well, they argue that what we're seeing is the birth of a brand new economic engine. They believe AI isn't just another tech trend. It's a fundamental shift that's going to create wealth and opportunity on a scale we've never seen before, and in some really unexpected places.
Now, what's so fascinating about this is what it actually means. When we think about AI, we usually picture software, people coding in dark rooms. But Huang's point is that to build the physical backbone for AI, we're talking data centers, energy grids, chip factories. It's this monumental project that's creating a massive boom for skilled trades.
And you can see that ripple effect right here. We're talking about a soaring demand for electricians and technicians. Reports are coming out that six-figure salaries are becoming pretty common. This isn't about replacing factory workers. It's about building entirely new industries that need hands-on, highly skilled blue-collar jobs.
So what's fueling this whole build-out? Well, insane returns. I mean, listen to this. The CEO of NASDAQ, Adena Friedman, said that companies who are actually getting AI to work right are already seeing a nearly threefold return on their investment. That's the kind of number that makes boardrooms open their wallets and just pour trillions into this new infrastructure.
At its heart, the whole argument for abundance is a classic economic one, and Bill Gates pretty much sums it up perfectly here. I mean, throughout history, whenever new tech makes us more productive, it's ultimately led to more wealth, new kinds of jobs, and a higher standard of living for everyone. The optimists just think AI is the next and maybe the most powerful chapter in that exact same story.
Okay, but for every promise of a blue-collar boom, there was this chilling counter-narrative echoing through Davos. And they didn't see it as some gentle tide of progress. The managing director of the IMF used a much more dramatic word. She called AI's impact on the global labor market a tsunami, a force so powerful it could just overwhelm our ability to adapt.
The World Economic Forum's own data really highlights the sheer scale of this thing. I mean, yeah, on paper it's a net gain of 78 million jobs, but stop and think about the reality of 92 million roles just being eliminated. That is a level of disruption that no modern economy has ever had to deal with in such a short amount of time.
And this tsunami, it's not going to hit everywhere equally. The IMF's analysis shows that advanced economies are the most exposed, with a staggering 60% of jobs likely to be impacted by AI. So this isn't some distant problem for other countries. It's a clear and present challenge for the wealthiest nations on Earth.
And here's where it gets even weirder. There's this paradox at the heart of the whole AI rollout. While a few companies are seeing those huge returns we talked about, a PwC survey found that over half of CEOs, 56%, say they are currently getting nothing from their AI spending. It points to this massive gap between the hype and the reality for most businesses, which just creates even more uncertainty.
This quote, it just cuts right to the heart of the anxiety, doesn't it?
For a lot of workers, this is exactly what they hear when executives talk about productivity. They hear that AI is just the latest tool to squeeze out more profits by, shrinking the number of employees. And a new kind of technology is making that fear feel more real than ever.
Okay, this is a really important shift we got to talk about, because the conversation has moved way past chatbots like ChatGPT. The focus now is on what they call agentic AI. Think of it like this. A chatbot can answer your questions about a flight. An agentic AI can find the best flight, book it using your credit card, check you in, and order your Uber to the airport, all by itself. It's not just an assistant, it's an autonomous agent. And this is the tech that's forcing leaders to ask what happens when AI isn't just the co-pilot, but the pilot.
So, faced with all this chaos and uncertainty, the World Economic Forum tried to map things out. They laid out 4 potential scenarios for the future. You should think of these less as predictions and more as possible worlds that we could end up creating depending on the choices we make right now.
So, are we headed for supercharged progress where a skilled workforce adapts perfectly? Or do we fall into an age of displacement with mass unemployment? Maybe it's a slower co-pilot economy where AI just helps us out. Or, the worst case, stalled progress, where we get all the disruption but none of the benefits. The stakes could not possibly be higher.
Which brings us to the final act of the Davos drama, what they're calling the Great Reconfiguration. Leaders basically admitted that massive disruption is the new normal. So the question isn't if things will change anymore, it's how do we manage a transition that is already proving to be incredibly painful for millions of people.
And check out this number, because it is absolutely shocking and it shows just how badly we're failing to prepare. Despite all the talk about reskilling, a recent report found that 55% of employees received 0 workplace training in the last year. 0. We are flying straight into a storm without teaching anyone how to fly the new plane.
And because of that massive gap, ideas that used to be considered, way out on the fringe, they're suddenly front and center in the conversation. Leaders are seriously debating these really radical proposals for a new social safety net. Things like universal basic income, a special tax on AI activities, or even a robot tax to directly pay for programs to help displaced workers.
And this isn't just some academic debate. You've got Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the guy who is literally building this technology, proposing a model where we would tax big companies and land, and then distribute that money directly to citizens as an AI dividend. The fact that one of the architects of this revolution is calling for wealth redistribution tells you just how serious this has all become.
In the end, though, the most powerful message to come out of Davos might have been this one from Mark Carney. There is no going back. We are not putting the AI genie back in the bottle. Leaders can't just wish this disruption away. The reconfiguration is happening, and the only choice they have is how to navigate it.
And that really gets to the crucial takeaway from Davos. The future isn't a simple choice between abundance and anxiety. We're almost certainly going to get a bit of both. The real question, the one that leaders are wrestling with right now, is a question of balance. How do we harness the incredible wealth that AI is going to create to pay for the massive reskilling and the new social safety nets that its disruption is going to require? The debate is no longer about if we should reconfigure our economy, but how fast. We have to build a future that is both innovative and inclusive.
So at the 2026 World Economic Forum in Davos, something really shifted. The hype and the speculation around AI finally slammed into reality. The conversation wasn't about what AI could do anymore. It was about what it was actually doing to jobs, to our economy, and to our future. And frankly, what they concluded was pretty startling. And listen, this isn't just some random pundit on social media we're talking about. That's the head of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, basically setting off the fire alarm. A tsunami. That one word just echoed through the entire conference, framing the whole debate with this feeling of incredible urgent power. So, when you hear a warning that stark, you'd think they'd have a solid plan of action, right? Well, that's the big question we're digging into here. What happens when the most powerful people in the world are face to face with a force of nature they actually helped create? To really get what happened, we're going to walk through the whole debate. We'll start with this central paradox of AI. Then we'll look at the 2 competing views, the optimists and the pessimists. We'll dig into the hard data behind what everyone's calling the Great Reconfiguration, explore the pretty radical idea of universal basic income, and then wrap up with the massive challenge of just trying to lead through all this uncertainty. Okay, so the first thing you've got to get about the whole conversation at Davos is that it was completely split. I mean, there wasn't one single vision for where we're headed. There were 2, and they were pulling in completely opposite directions. So in one corner, you've got the abundance for all crew. They see this future with these incredible productivity booms, a ton of entirely new jobs we can't even imagine yet, and just massive economic growth for everybody. But then, in the other corner, you have the age of displacement camp. And they are worried about mass job loss, inequality just skyrocketing, and the real potential for serious social unrest. The whole debate, really, is about which of these two futures we're actually building right now.
All right, let's kick things off with the optimists. This view, and it's probably not going to surprise you, was pushed really hard by the leaders who were right at the forefront of the AI revolution. And they weren't just kind of hopeful, they were seriously bullish on jobs. And the heart of their argument, which you can hear right from NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang, is actually surprisingly physical. His point is that before AI can really start messing with knowledge work, we first have to build all this stuff it runs on. And that's a historic global construction project. And this is leading to what some are calling a blue-collar boom. I mean, think about it. As we build these massive data centers all over the world, there's a soaring demand for electricians, for technicians, for plumbers, for steelworkers. Some of these data center jobs are already paying six-figure salaries. So in this view, AI's first big impact is actually creating traditional jobs, and only later does it start to augment the rest.
But for every optimist you had in Davos, there was someone else ringing the alarm bells. This counterargument was coming from outside the tech bubble, from the worlds of high finance and organized labor. And they were looking at the same facts and seeing a very, very different future. And wow, their warnings were blunt. JP Morgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon, did not mince words. When he was asked straight up if AI would mean fewer jobs in the next 5 years, his answer was just a simple yes. Labor unions were pointing out what seems kind of obvious. For decades, a productivity tool is just corporate speak for doing more with fewer workers. And this isn't just a theory anymore. People are feeling it. Anxiety among workers about being replaced by AI has jumped all the way to 40%. So, who's right? The tech optimists or the financial realists? Well, the answer that started to take shape at Davos is it's not one or the other. The reality is that we are heading for both, at a scale and a speed that is honestly kind of hard to wrap your head around. Okay, first, the good news, and it's a huge number. The World Economic Forum's own report projects that technology is going to create a staggering 170 million new jobs by 2030. That's the engine of the optimist argument right there. But, and this is the crucial but, here's the other side of that coin. In that exact same time frame, 92 million existing jobs are expected to be displaced or just eliminated by that same technology. The amount of churn is just immense. So, when you put it all together, what does this actually mean? Yeah, we're looking at a net increase of 78 million jobs, which sounds great, but you got to look at that last line. 40% of all core worker skills are expected to be disrupted. That means even if your job still exists, how you do your job is going to fundamentally change. This isn't just about a few new jobs here and there. This is a massive, economy-wide reskilling event. And that right there leads to what might be the single biggest problem they talked about at Davos. We have this exploding need for new skills, right? But the reality on the ground is that 55% of employees got zero workplace training in the last year. There is a massive gap between what our economy is going to need and what our workforce is being prepared for. This skills gap, it's so huge that it basically forced a much more radical idea onto the table. I mean, what happens if the change is just too fast and reskilling can't keep up? What does the social safety net even look like in a world with intelligent machines? And this is what led directly to the UBI question. So for anyone who's not familiar, Universal Basic Income, or UBI, it's this idea that every single citizen gets a regular, guaranteed check from the government, no strings attached, just to cover basic living costs. Now, it's a concept that's been floating around for a while, but AI has absolutely pushed it from the fringes right into the center of the economic debate. And it forces us to ask a really deep question. In a world where a job might not be the main source of income for millions, how do we redefine things like value and purpose and our whole social contract? And what was so wild about the Davos discussion was that it wasn't some far-off philosophical debate anymore. It got super practical. You had leaders seriously talking about how to pay for UBI, tossing around ideas like special taxes on robots or on the wealth created by AI, and even making big tech contribute directly to these funds. And get this push isn't just coming from economists or social theorists, it's coming from the absolute heart of the tech industry. OpenAI's Sam Altman was arguing that AI is going to generate such phenomenal wealth that it can easily pay for a basic income for everyone. He even proposed a way to do it, something called an American Equity Fund that would tax big companies to give dividends directly to citizens. You know, all of this, the jobs getting created, the jobs getting destroyed, this whole UBI question, it all points to this massive new challenge. It's not just about managing an economy anymore. It's about trying to govern a society that is changing at its very foundations, without any kind of map to tell us where we're going. I think the historian Yuval Noah Harari put it best. We are all flying blind. Nobody in the history of the world has ever done this before. So the goal, he argued, can't be to have all the right answers from the start. The goal has to be to build systems that let us learn and adapt and correct our course as we go. And at the end of the day, that's really the big takeaway from Davos. The debate is past the tech itself. AI is here, it's real, it's getting more powerful every single day. The real questions, they're about us now. What kind of economy do we actually want to build? What kind of society do we really value? What are we going to choose to do with all of this incredible, unprecedented power? Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're jumping right into one of the most intense debates that came out of the World Economic Forum at Davos. How is AI actually going to transform the future of work? You know, the conversation isn't about if it'll change things anymore. It's all about how, and just how fast this is all going to happen. Okay, so let's get right into it because this slide really nails the central conflict. On one side, you have NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, saying AI is this unbelievable historic boom. He's talking about a complete renaissance for skilled trades with a huge demand for electricians and technicians to build out these massive data centers. But then on the other side, you've got Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan Chase, who gives a totally different prediction. Basically, fewer jobs. It's this massive paradox, and it has everyone, leaders, workers, economists, completely divided. And that's the big question we're tackling today, right? Is AI this force for incredible progress, creating opportunities we can't even dream of yet? Or is it about to cause this huge, painful disruption that could totally reshape society as we know it? We're going to break down both sides of this argument, and let's start with the optimistic case. All right, first up, let's explore this vision where AI doesn't just replace us, but actually creates completely new kinds of work. This is the whole idea of a new-collar era. A workforce that combines technical chops with those uniquely human strengths, like creativity and critical thinking. And check this out. This isn't some guess about the future. LinkedIn says 1.3 million AI-enabled jobs are roles that have already been created in just the past 2 years. So this is real, tangible data that shows AI is already rotating the job market, not just shrinking it. So what do these new-collar jobs actually look like? Well, we're talking about roles like AI integrators, who help companies actually adopt this tech, or data center technicians, the folks who are literally building the physical backbone of the AI revolution. And we're even seeing the rise of big strategic roles like head of HI popping up in companies all over the world. I mean, that's a huge signal that this is becoming a core part of business. These jobs are really the foundation of a whole new digital economy. And this just brilliantly illustrates another really powerful trend. AI tools are making it cheaper and easier than ever to start a business. I mean, they let one person prototype ideas, reach customers, and compete in ways that used to take a ton of money. The data from LinkedIn is pretty wild, a 60% jump year over year in people calling themselves founders. Now, this isn't just about spotting an opportunity. For some people, it's also about creating their own security, because traditional jobs feel less stable. Okay, so that's the optimistic view, but now we have to look at the other side of the coin, the really cautionary tale of AI as a disruptive force. This is that vision of mass displacement, a shrinking job market, and a fundamental challenge to how our careers even work. And listen to this quote. This is like a tsunami. That's not a tech critic or a union leader saying that. That's the head of the International Monetary Fund. When the managing director of the IMF uses a word like tsunami, you know it's a serious signal about the sheer scale and speed of the disruption that economists are bracing for. It's a warning that this wave might be too big and too fast for our current systems to really handle. And the IMF is predicting this impact is going to be incredibly widespread. In advanced economies, they're estimating that 60% of jobs will be affected by AI. Now look, affected doesn't always mean gone. For some, AI will make their job better. For others, it'll transform it. But for a lot of people, yeah, it could mean outright replacement. The bottom line is the vast majority of us are going to feel this shift. And this right here, this might be the most immediate and frankly worrying statistic we've seen, a nearly 30% drop in entry-level job postings. And why? Well, it's because AI is getting scarily good at automating the exact tasks, data entry, basic analysis, admin support, that have always been the first rung on the career ladder for young people. This leads to a really fascinating and kind of scary concept experts are calling the cognitive waterline. Just think of it like the minimum skill level you need to be useful in the economy. As AI gets better and better at all that junior level work, that waterline just keeps rising. And this creates a huge paradox, a massive second-order effect. How do you train the next generation of senior leaders if all the junior roles they need to get experience and build judgment just vanish? It could hollow out the entire talent pipeline. So, you've got this incredible promise on one hand and this really serious peril on the other. What's the path forward? Well, the key takeaway from Davos is that the future isn't some fixed thing. The outcome is going to be decided by the strategies that companies and all of us as individuals start putting in place today. To figure this out, leaders are starting to think about AI not as just a single piece of software, but as this massive 5-layer industrial stack. Success isn't just about mastering one layer. It's about seeing the opportunities and the bottlenecks across the entire system. Understanding this stack helps leaders see AI as a complete industrial challenge, not just some IT problem. And companies are quickly realizing there are 2 ways to go about this. The first is the bottom-up path. You just give your employees some AI tools to help with their current tasks. You get small 5–10% gains, but the real transformation, that comes from a top-down redesign, where you totally rebuild entire workflows around AI agents, treating them like actual digital coworkers. This is where AI stops being just an IT project and becomes a complete reinvention of how work gets done. So what can businesses actually do right now? Well, the World Economic Forum identified a set of what they're calling no-regret moves. These are real, actionable strategies. Start small so you can learn fast, make sure your tech and talent plans are evolving together, invest in genuine human-AI collaboration, and for goodness sake, build the solid data infrastructure you're going to need to succeed. And all of this is building toward a really powerful new idea: corporate AI sovereignty. The logic is pretty simple. If you only use generic AI models from other companies, you're just renting their intelligence. The real competitive advantage, the real moat, comes from capturing your company's unique knowledge, all the internal expertise and processes that make you special, and building that into AI systems that you actually own and control. That becomes your proprietary intelligence. So after all of that, where does this leave us? The humans in this whole equation? Well, it brings us right back to what makes us unique. The most durable, the most valuable skills in this new era are going to be the ones that a machine just can't easily copy. As Accenture's CEO Julie Sweet puts it, the focus is shifting to a human-in-the-lead model. And this isn't about a person just checking a box in a loop. It's about technology making us better, but never replacing our core human strengths like judgment, creativity, leadership, and ethical oversight. At the end of the day, we run the companies. The AI works with us. Ultimately, this is the challenge for every single one of us. The whole debate about job replacement kind of misses the bigger picture. The real task here is to figure out how we collaborate with these incredibly powerful new systems to create more value than either a human or a machine could create alone. Your ability to adapt, to never stop learning, and to work alongside AI, that's the one skill that will define this next era of work. The only question is, are you ready to redefine your role?
So what in the world does a tiny island in the Caribbean have to do with the AI revolution that's changing everything, including your job? Well, as it turns out, pretty much everything. Let's get into it, because this is a wild story that connects a digital gold rush to a potential blueprint for all of humanity.
The answer is kind of amazing. It all comes down to just 2 letters. .ai, the story of how this little piece of digital real estate became a lifeline for the nation of Anguilla. It's so much more than just a lucky break. Honestly, it might be one of the most important economic experiments happening on the entire planet right now.
Just look at that number, $70 million. By 2025, that's how much Anguilla was projected to rake in just from selling .ai domain names. Now think about this. For an island with only about 16,000 people, that isn't just a nice bonus, it's a total, absolute game changer.
So how did this even happen? I mean, it's a wild story of being in the right place at the right time. When the internet was being carved up, Anguilla just happened to be assigned .ai. For decades, nobody cared. And then, ChatGPT exploded onto the scene, and suddenly, bam! Every AI company on Earth needed those two letters.
I mean, just look at the speed of this thing. In 2023, you're talking $32 million, which is already a massive boost, right? But just 2 years later, that figure more than doubles. It was on track to become their single biggest source of income. We're not talking about a side hustle here. This became the very engine of their economy.
And this chart really puts it in perspective. Can you imagine if nearly half of your entire country's budget was paid for by selling little bits of digital land? And get this, it's not from taxing citizens, it's from sales. It's a pure digital dividend flowing directly back into the public good and totally transforming the island.
And the best part? They're being incredibly smart about it. This isn't just money disappearing into a black hole. It's going into real-world stuff, expanding the airport, fixing roads, giving people tax breaks, and beefing up healthcare. And here's the really clever part. They're building a sovereign wealth fund, making sure this boom builds a future that lasts. They're playing the long game.
Okay, so while Anguilla is celebrating this incredible windfall, halfway across the world, leaders at Davos are sounding a massive alarm. They're looking at the exact same AI revolution, but they see something very, very different. A threat that could turn the global workforce completely upside down.
A tsunami. Just let that word sink in for a second. That's the term the head of the International Monetary Fund used. It perfectly captures the sheer scale and, more importantly, the speed of the disruption that's headed for jobs everywhere. This isn't a gentle wave of change. It's a force of nature about to hit the shore.
And it's not just regulators. Here you have one of the most powerful bankers in the world, Jamie Dimon, and he's not mincing words. No hedging, no maybe. He was asked directly if AI means fewer jobs, and his answer was a blunt yes. He's basically warning that we have to get ahead of this, or the social fallout could be huge.
So, the really terrifying thing that all the experts at Davos agreed on wasn't just that jobs will disappear. It's that they'll disappear faster than we can possibly adapt, faster than we can create new jobs, faster than we can retrain people. And it's that speed, that velocity, that's the real danger keeping world leaders up at night.
So what's driving this insane, unprecedented speed? Well, it's the next leap forward in AI. We're about to move way beyond the chatbots we're all playing with now. We're entering the era of what's being called agentic AI. And folks, this is a whole new ballgame.
Okay, so let's break that down. You know how with ChatGPT you have to give it a prompt, then another prompt, then another? You're in charge. Well, agentic AI is different. You don't give it a prompt, you give it a goal, and then it figures out the plan and goes and does it, all on its own. It's not a tool you use, it's a worker you deploy.
This comparison really nails the difference. A generative AI can answer your question about flights. An agentic AI goes ahead and books the flight for you. It finds the best price, checks it against your calendar, uses your payment info, and gets it done. See the difference? One talks, the other acts.
And let this really sink in. This isn't some futurist just guessing. The people at Anthropic, the ones actually building this technology, are saying that fully autonomous AI employees are basically here. And here's the kicker. They don't arrive one at a time. You can spin up 1,000 or 1,000,000 of these digital workers almost instantly to do jobs that people do today.
And that brings us right back to our little island. Because this is the moment where Anguilla's story transforms from just a quirky, lucky break into something that might be a profound lesson for all of us. What if their model isn't just for them? What if it's the blueprint for how we handle this massive change?
Look, what Anguilla is demonstrating in the real world right now is that you can actually fund a society by selling access to the essential digital plumbing that the new AI economy runs on. They've essentially created a kind of accidental universal basic income, and it's being paid for by the very AI boom that everyone's so worried about.
And you know who basically agrees with this idea? The guy who started this whole thing, OpenAI's Sam Altman. He's on record saying that AI will create absolutely phenomenal wealth, but at the same time, the price of most human labor is going to fall towards zero. So the money will be there, but the traditional way we all get a piece of it, a paycheck, that link is about to be broken.
So there's the paradox, right? All this wealth being created by AI and all these jobs being displaced by AI, how in the world do you bridge that gap? Well, maybe the answer is to take Anguilla's accidental success story and turn it into a deliberate global plan.
Here's how a grand design might work, laid out really simply. Step 1. All these billions of new AI workers, these agents,
They're going to need unique identities to operate online, right? Just like a website needs a domain. Step 2, we create and sell those identities, just like Anguilla sells .ai domains. And step 3, the magic part. We take all that revenue and distribute it to every single human being on the planet.
The goal here is, well, it's profound. It's about making sure that the incredible dividends from this new form of intelligence, an intelligence that was built on the sum total of all human knowledge, art, and history, flows back to all of us. It would be a system where our own creation actually supports its creators.
All of this brings us to a monumental crossroads. I'm not being dramatic here. The decisions we make right now about how we govern AI and share in its wealth are going to define our society for centuries. The stakes really could not be higher.
This really lays out the two big paths in front of us. On one side, you have futures of chaos and deepening division. On the other, futures where we actually harness this technology for the good of everyone. And the most important thing to realize is none of this is inevitable. The future isn't just something that happens to us, it's something we have to choose to build.
Let's put some names on these futures. On the one hand, you have a scenario some are calling neo-feudalism. Basically, a new dark age where a handful of tech lords own all the AI and all the wealth it creates. The rest of us are left out. The other path has been called techno-socialism, a future where the insane abundance created by AI is shared by everybody, providing for all.
And so, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one simple question. AI is not science fiction anymore. It is here. A new kind of intelligence is waking up, built from the collective mind of all humanity. The real question is no longer if it will change the world. The question is, who gets to own that future? So, let's talk about a story that honestly sounds a little bit made up. It connects a tiny, sun-drenched island to the massive, world-changing future of artificial intelligence. And somehow, it might just give us a blueprint for how we all get through this thing. Take a look at this number, $70 million. In 2025 alone, this kind of money is pouring into one tiny nation's government. And get this, it has absolutely nothing to do with tourism or exports. This is something else entirely. And yeah, you heard that right, just 15,000 people. So what's the connection? Well, the answer reveals this really fascinating and maybe completely accidental model for how humanity could actually benefit from the AI revolution. It's a real-world experiment that might just reshape our entire economy. Okay, first up, let's look at how a simple bureaucratic footnote basically turned into a national treasure. The numbers you're seeing here are, well, they're staggering. This is what an exponential curve looks like in the real world, something our brains aren't really wired to understand. In just a few years, revenue from a country domain code has just exploded. We're talking about something that's on track to provide nearly half of Anguilla's entire government budget. It's a financial revolution happening right before our eyes. And that's it. That's the secret. This entire windfall comes from selling the rights to the domain name that every single AI company on the planet now desperately wants. It's a little piece of digital real estate that is now funding an entire country. And here's the most crucial part. This isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This is the canary in the coal mine. It shows a direct line from the infrastructure of the new AI economy to real, tangible benefits for actual people. We're talking better airports, new roads, and stronger healthcare. So how did two little letters become digital gold? Let's take a look at the engine driving this whole thing. It's pretty simple, really. Since ChatGPT kicked the doors open on AI for the public, every startup, every tech giant, every investor, they all want to brand themselves with .ai. And yeah, they are willing to pay a serious premium for it. It's like buying a storefront on the busiest street in the world. And we're not talking about small change here. These prices just go to show you how insane the demand is. These aren't just website addresses anymore. They're digital status symbols. They're a declaration that your company is on the absolute cutting edge. But here's the thing. This same AI boom that's making Anguilla rich has another, much more disruptive side. And this was the huge debate at the World Economic Forum and Davos, where you had leaders staring down two very, very different versions of our future. This one quote pretty much captures the massive anxiety around what AI is going to do to all of our jobs. Because for every person who sees opportunity, there's another who sees a giant, unstoppable wave of disruption heading right for us. And right here, you can see just how deep that divide is. On one side, you've got the tech optimists talking about a new renaissance. But on the other, You have financial realists warning about major social unrest if we don't handle this transition very, very carefully. It's a clash of two totally different futures.
This really lays out the paths in front of us. Are we going to choose a future that some people are calling techno-socialism, where technology creates just unbelievable abundance for everybody? Or do we risk ending up in some kind of neo-feudal state, where all the wealth and power is held by a tiny group of tech owners and the rest of us get left behind?
And that brings us right back to Anguilla. Could this tiny island's accidental success story actually hold the key to navigating this whole mess and maybe choosing that better future?
This is the absolute core question. What if, instead of just taxing people's labor, we funded society through the very infrastructure that AI is built on? That's what Anguilla is doing. It's coming from sales, not taxes. It's a subtle difference, but it's a really powerful one.
The idea here is to create a financial floor for every single person, no matter if they have a job or not. And this idea gets a lot more urgent when you hear people like Bill Gates say most humans just won't be needed for most jobs, or Elon Musk saying that work will basically become optional.
And look, you've even got one of the most influential people in AI, Sam Altman, explicitly saying that the profits from this technology can be taxed and just given directly back to people. He sees where the value is going, and he's pointing a way to redistribute it.
And you know, this isn't some brand new radical idea. Universal basic income has been talked about for decades by leaders all across the political spectrum, from civil rights heroes to conservative economists. It's been around for a while.
Okay, so for our final section, let's look at how this all might come together. Because we're moving past AI just being a tool and into something way more profound.
Yeah, we are right on the edge of an economy where non-human things aren't just our assistants, they're active workers. You know, we humans built the digital playground. We built the highways and the guardrails, and now these new agents are about to start playing in it.
And this isn't science fiction. This is coming from the people building it. And they're saying it's happening like next year. And that's when the exponential growth really kicks in. One year, you might have AI agents equal the number of human workers. The very next year, they could outnumber us 10 to 1. It gets big, fast.
So here's the bottom line. This new class of digital workers is going to need its own infrastructure. They need a way to operate, to transact, to be identified. They need digital passports. They need domains. So I'll leave you with this question. When there are trillions of AI agents out there that all need their own digital identities, who is going to own that infrastructure? Who is going to profit from it? I mean, isn't that maybe the single greatest economic opportunity in the history of humanity? Anguilla's story, which really started as a lucky accident, gives us this little glimpse of a possible future. A future where we don't just tax human labor into the ground, but instead we fund the entire human race from the wealth generated by the autonomous economy we're all creating. It's a blueprint not just for one island, but maybe for all of us.
So what if I told you the answer to the biggest question about AI and our future wasn't cooked up in some Silicon Valley lab or at a fancy summit in Davos, but on a tiny, sun-drenched island in the Caribbean? Yeah, you heard that right. This is one of the most unexpected and honestly important stories happening right now. Let's get into it. Our story starts here, in Anguilla. We're talking about a place with a population that could barely fill a small-town sports stadium. It's famous for beautiful beaches, for tourism, not for being on the cutting edge of global technology. But here's the twist. Through a complete accident of history, this tiny island has found itself smack in the middle of the AI gold rush. And in the process, it might be showing the rest of us a way to not just survive, but actually thrive in an automated future. The big question is, how on earth did that happen? Well, it all boils down to just two little letters. A piece of digital real estate that was assigned decades ago and has suddenly become one of the most valuable assets on the entire internet. Okay, so picture this. It's 1995. The internet is just getting its act together. Every country gets a two-letter domain code. Germany gets .de, Japan gets .jp, and through sheer, total, dumb luck, Anguilla gets .ai. For decades, nobody really cared. And then, artificial intelligence completely took over the world. And this chart says it all. I mean, just look at that curve. In 2023, they brought in around $32 million. Fast forward to 2025, and that number is projected to be over $70 million. That's not just growth, my friends. That is a rocket ship. It's an exponential curve, and it's all fueled by this global frenzy to own anything ending in .ai. And it's not even close to slowing down. For 2026, they're predicting a mind-blowing $132 million. For an island of just 15,000 people, that is like winning the Powerball lottery every single year. But, while Anguilla is figuring out what to do with its accidental fortune, the rest of us are trying to figure out what this AI boom means for the future of humanity. Because this little island story, it plugs right into the massive global debate about the future of work itself. So let's zoom out for a second. Picture the scene. World leaders, tech billionaires, all gathered in Davos, Switzerland. And the number one topic on everyone's mind is AI, the incredible opportunities and the terrifying disruption. And boy, are opinions divided. Really, the whole conversation boils down to two completely different visions of the future. On one side, you've got this utopian solar punk idea of abundance, where AI and robots do all the work and humans are free to live their best lives. And on the other, you've got this darker, cyberpunk vision of mass unemployment and chaos if we don't get this right. And you've got people like Elon Musk, who perfectly summed up the super optimistic view at Davos. He talks about a future of incredible abundance, where work becomes optional. But what's the actual tech that gets us from here to there? Well, it comes down to something experts are calling the agentic leap. This is the real game changer. We're moving away from AI as just a fancy tool, like a chatbot, to AI as an autonomous agent. Think of it like a new employee you can onboard, give a goal, and then it just goes and does it. This is the technology that's set to turn the entire job market upside down. Which, of course, brings us to the billion or maybe trillion-dollar question. If these AI agents start doing all the work, what happens to all the people who used to do those jobs? For years, the main idea that's been thrown around is universal basic income, or UBI. You've probably heard of it. It's pretty simple. The government gives every single citizen a regular check to cover their basic needs. No strings attached. But here's the thing. There has always been one massive conversation-stopping roadblock. The question that kills the whole idea before it even gets started. Where does all that money come from? And you always hear the same ideas, right? Let's tax the robots. Let's put a huge tax on the big tech companies getting rich from AI. The problem is, those ideas are politically explosive and almost impossible to pass. But this is where our story comes full circle, right back to that tiny island. Because Anguilla, completely by accident, has shown us another way. A way to fund a society from the AI economy not through taxes, but through sales.
Let's just look at these numbers again because they are staggering. By 2025, they expect that nearly half of the entire government's revenue will come from selling .ai domains. They're calling it a sovereign digital dividend, basically pure profit from a digital asset they happen to own. And the impact is very, very real.
I mean, this isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. This digital cash is being pumped directly into the country. They're expanding the airport, fixing roads, giving people tax breaks, and beefing up healthcare. They're even starting a rainy day fund for the future. It's basically a UBI-like outcome, but funded directly by the AI boom itself. Okay, and this is where the story takes a turn from just interesting to, frankly, a little bit science fiction. Because the demand for these domains, it's not just going to come from humans for much longer. Think about it. As we make that agentic leap, these new AI employees are going to need to operate in our world. They'll need digital identities, their own accounts, their own digital home addresses to get anything done. And AI is going to need its own website. Now, I know what you're thinking. There are a million hurdles. Legally, an AI can't own property. It doesn't have a passport to register a domain. And who pays taxes? Who's liable if it goes rogue? But these are the exact problems that every government and tech company is racing to solve right now. These aren't if questions anymore. They're how and when questions. And this is the part where our brains kind of break, because humans are just not built to understand exponential growth. Seriously, do the math. What happens when the number of AI agents isn't just 8 billion, like us, but 80 billion or 800 billion? We could be looking at a future with literally trillions of AI agents, all needing to buy their own little piece of the internet. The gold rush that's funding Anguilla, in that future, it will look like a corner lemonade stand. So you see, Anguilla's story is so much more than a lucky break. It is the canary in the coal mine. It's proof that a new kind of economy is coming, one where we can fund our societies not by taxing AI, but by selling it the digital real estate and identities it needs to exist. So the biggest question of all is this: as AI stops being a tool and starts becoming an economic player in its own right, who gets to write the rules for this new world? And who gets to benefit from the unbelievable wealth that's about to be created?
At the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, there was really only one question on everyone's mind. Is AI going to lead us to this amazing, abundant future? Or is it going to lead to mass unemployment and just, well, chaos? The whole debate has really split into two completely different and pretty powerful visions of what's coming next.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all this? Well, here's what we're going to do. First, we'll break down those two big competing visions for the future. We're going to look at the promise of abundance and then the flip side, the peril of massive job displacement. After that, we've got a really surprising story, a real-world clue from a tiny island that might just hold a key. And then we'll wrap it all up with the billion-dollar question, or maybe trillion-dollar question. How are we actually going to pay for this future?
All right, so let's get into it. The whole conversation around AI's impact on our lives, on our jobs, it's become completely polarized. Honestly, it feels like we're being asked to choose between two different sci-fi movies. Okay, so on one hand, you've got the tech optimists painting this incredible picture of a Star Trek future, right? A world full of abundance, where tech solves all our big problems and we're all free to just create. But then on the other hand, you've got these serious financial leaders sounding the alarm bell, warning about a Blade Runner future, one with huge inequality and social unrest, all driven by automation. It's a pretty stark choice. So let's start with the good news. The utopian view. The argument from the biggest optimists in the tech world is basically this: AI isn't something we should be afraid of. No, they say, it's the single greatest engine for progress humanity has ever built.
Elon Musk, for example, paints a really vivid picture of this. He's talking about a future where AI and robots completely wipe out poverty and create a super high standard of living for literally everyone. I mean, just imagine it. A world where all your basic needs are just met. That would free us all up to pursue creativity, bigger ideas, you name it.
And Bill Gates is pretty much on the same page. His whole take is that the huge boost we're going to see in economic productivity, well, that's a massive win for humanity, period. Now, he's not naive. He admits there will be challenges along the way, but he sees them as solvable problems. Just hurdles to clear on the path to something better, not some kind of catastrophic end of the world.
Okay, but for every one of those optimists, there's a really powerful voice on the other side saying, hang on a second, we are not ready for this. They're warning that the speed and the sheer scale of the disruption that's coming is something we've never seen before. They're not talking about hurdles. They're talking about a tsunami. Take Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He didn't mince words at all. When he was asked if AI would mean fewer jobs in the next 5 years, his answer was just a straight-up, unequivocal yes. He made it crystal clear. Job losses are coming, and they're coming fast. And he warned that if we don't see this massive coordinated effort to retrain people, we're risking some serious social backlash.
And this isn't just some vague threat either. It's getting really, really specific. For instance, the CEO of the AI company Anthropic warned that as AI becomes more, well, agentic, meaning it can act on its own, it could just erase up to half of all junior white-collar jobs. And we're talking about the very jobs that have always been that first step on the career ladder for millions of people.
So, where does that leave us? We've got these two incredibly powerful, totally conflicting visions, right? Utopia versus dystopia. It feels like an impossible choice. But what if I told you there's a real-world example out there right now that might offer a third way forward? And, weirdly enough, we find it on this tiny Caribbean island with only 15,000 people. They've accidentally stumbled onto what could be a blueprint for the future.
Okay, so get this. Way back in the early days of the internet, some bureaucratic body was handing out 2-letter domain codes to every country. The UK got .uk, Germany got .de, you get the idea. And by just a total stroke of luck, the tiny island of Anguilla was given .ai. At the time, it meant absolutely nothing. Today, it's basically digital gold.
So when the AI revolution just completely exploded, suddenly every tech company on the planet was scrambling to get a website ending in .ai. And here's the kicker. For every single one of those registrations, a fee went straight to the government of Anguilla. In 2023 alone, that revenue hit a staggering $32 million.
But wait, it gets crazier. That was just the beginning. The growth has been absolutely explosive. That number more than doubled to over $70 million just 2 years later. I mean, the pace is just incredible. And to give you a sense of what that actually means for them, this digital gold rush went from funding about a fifth of the entire government's budget to being on track to fund nearly half of everything the government does. And that happened in just a couple of years.
And looking at the numbers, it's clear this isn't just some one-time fluke. It's a real, sustained economic engine. We're seeing what looks like exponential growth here. Both the revenue and the number of domain registrations are just climbing like crazy, blowing past the 1 million domain mark in early 2026.
And you know what's really great? They're putting that money to good use. It's not just piling up in some bank account. No, it's funding things that matter. Expanding the airport, fixing roads, providing tax relief for their citizens, and boosting healthcare services. And on top of all that, they're being really smart about it, building a sovereign wealth fund to make sure they're stable for the long haul.
Okay, so this brings us right back to that huge question we started with. If AI is going to displace a lot of jobs, how do we support people? Anguilla's story, this crazy accidental experiment, gives us a really fascinating clue. What if we could fund our society not just by taxing people's paychecks, but by tapping into the massive wealth being generated by the AI economy itself?
And this is where a big idea starts to enter the picture. Universal Basic Income, or UBI for short. The concept is pretty simple, actually. It's a system where every single citizen gets a regular, guaranteed payment from the government. Think of it like a financial safety net, a floor that no one can fall below, especially in a really uncertain economy.
Now, this isn't some fringe idea from the sidelines. The people right at the heart of the AI revolution, guys like OpenAI's co-founder Sam Altman, are actually pushing for it. His argument is pretty straightforward. AI is going to create a phenomenal amount of new wealth. So we need to change our system to tax that wealth and then give it directly back to everybody.
So you see, a potential roadmap is starting to take shape here. Step 1, you figure out how to generate revenue directly from the AI economy. Maybe that's through taxes like Gates and Altman suggest, or maybe it's by monetizing digital assets, just like Anguilla did. Step 2, you use that money to fund social safety nets like UBI. Step 3, you reinvest in people, helping them reskill for the jobs of the future. And step 4, and this is crucial, you build strong rules and governance to make sure this whole thing is managed safely and ethically.
And look, we need to start thinking about a plan like this now, because this is all becoming incredibly urgent. The technology is not waiting for us. We are moving so fast from AI that just answers our questions to agentic AI that can actually do things on its own. We're talking about AI that can book your flights, manage your finances, even run entire projects all by itself.
So this all leaves us with one final and really critical question. The technology itself, it's neutral. It's just a tool. Whether it ends up building that utopia or that dystopia depends completely on the choices we make, the rules we design, and the vision we choose to follow. AI is learning to act at a speed we can barely comprehend. So the real question isn't about whether the technology is ready, it's about whether we are ready to lead.
All right, let's get right into it. We've got a story for you today that, believe it or not, connects a tiny, sunny Caribbean island to the absolute giant that is artificial intelligence. And yeah, it all kicks off with just 2 little letters, A and I. But where it ends? Well, it ends with some of the biggest questions we could possibly ask about our future, about work, about wealth, and really about what it even means to be human. So take a look at this number. We're talking about 70 million US dollars. Now, you might think, okay, that's the valuation for some hot new tech startup, right? Nope, not even close. That is the cash a tiny government brought in just by selling domain names, and get this, they did it in less than a year. Which, of course, leads to the big question. How in the world did that happen? Well, the answer is this incredible, almost accidental twist of fate. But it's an accident that's giving us a sneak peek, a preview, really, of where our entire world is headed. Welcome to the AI Gold Rush. It is the perfect, and I mean perfect, example of being in the right digital place at the exact right time. You know, the setup is actually beautifully simple. Way back decades ago, this little island, Anguilla, got its own country code for the internet, a TLD. And that code was .ai. For years, nobody cared. It was totally obscure. But then, boom, the AI explosion happened. And suddenly, those 2 little letters became the most valuable piece of digital real estate on the planet. Every single AI company, from the tiniest startup to the biggest giant, had to have one. And the impact? It's just staggering. I mean, look at these numbers. In 2023, they made $32 million. A year later, it's almost $40 million. And this year, they're on a path for that .ai money to pay for nearly half of their entire government budget. This is not just a little extra cash. It's a full-on economic earthquake. And it's all being powered by 2 letters. And what's so great about this story is that the money isn't just vanishing into some government bank account. No way. Their premier, Ellis Webster, puts it perfectly. He calls it a once-in-a-generation opportunity. They're taking that digital gold and turning it into real stuff, building resilience. They're funding things that matter for the long run, like a bigger airport, better roads, and improved healthcare. But here's the thing. Anguilla's incredible luck? That's just one side of the coin. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine for the rest of us. Because while they're surfing this amazing wave, the rest of the world is looking at the horizon and bracing for impact. You go to a place like the World Economic Forum in Davos, and the leaders there, they're not talking about a gold rush. Oh no. They're warning about a tsunami.
And I mean that literally. That's the word they're using. Not a ripple, not even a big wave. A tsunami. The chief of the IMF, one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, used that exact word to warn about what AI is poised to do to the global job market.
And that alarm bell was ringing all over Davos. You had Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, calling AI faster, broader, and unavoidable. The feeling in the room, the consensus, was just chilling. The message was loud and clear. Massive disruption to jobs is not a maybe, it is coming. We could see jobs disappearing faster than we can create new ones or retrain people. And the scariest part? Most companies, most governments, they are just dangerously unprepared for what's about to hit. So why all the panic? What's really driving this fear? Well, it's because AI is fundamentally changing. We're leaving behind the era of AI as just a clever tool, like a better spell checker. We are now entering the age of the AI employee. Okay, here's the term you absolutely need to get your head around. Agentic AI. This isn't about an AI that just helps you write an email anymore. No, we're talking about an autonomous system. You give it a goal, and it can reason, plan the workflow, and actually do things in the real world. Think about it. An AI that doesn't just write a business report for you, but then schedules the meetings, emails everyone, analyzes all the feedback from those meetings, and then rewrites the entire strategy by itself. That's a different leap.
And please, don't think this is some far-off sci-fi fantasy. It's not. Anthropic, one of the top AI labs on the planet, is warning that these fully autonomous AI employees could be here in just a year. A year? This is not a drill, folks. This is happening now.
All of this speed, all this change, it puts all of us, all of humanity, at a massive fork in the road. And I mean a really stark choice, with 2 completely different futures waiting for us. So, what are the options? What's down each path? Well, this framework here lays out a few possibilities, but really, it boils down to 2 big ones. 2 futures that are heading for a collision, and we're the ones who have to choose. Okay, so on one path, you've got this idea of techno-socialism. You can picture it as a kind of solar punk future. Think Star Trek, bright, optimistic, clean. It's a world where technology creates so much abundance that great housing, healthcare, education, it's all basically free for everybody. It's a future of widespread prosperity. And then there's the other path, neo-feudalism. This is your classic cyberpunk nightmare. Think Blade Runner, dark, rainy, unequal. Technology just makes a tiny handful of people unbelievably rich, and they live in these walled-off cities while everyone else is left to scramble with mass unemployment and total corporate control. 2 very, very different worlds. Yeah, the gap between those 2 futures feels massive, right? Almost impossible. But if we want to aim for that better world, the solarpunk one, we have to ask a really practical question. How the heck do we pay for it? And to find a clue, a possible answer, well, we have to go all the way back to the beginning of our story. Seriously, think about it. If AI starts replacing jobs by the millions, how do we make sure people are okay? How do we support them? And that's where you look at Anguilla and wonder, could their model be a blueprint, a tiny prototype for the future, where value from the AI economy itself is used to fund the public good? And this isn't just some fringe idea. It's being talked about at the very top. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has actually proposed a way to do this. His logic is pretty simple. AI is going to make the things that aren't human labor, like company shares, land, computing power, insanely valuable. So he says, let's put a tax on those assets and give the money directly back to the people. Let's be clear about what this is. It's a version of Universal Basic Income, or UBI. But, and this is the crucial part, it's a new kind of UBI.
It's not funded by taxing people's salaries, which might be going down anyway. It's funded by taxing the new engine of the economy, the AI itself. In short, you tax the robots, not the people.
So where do we go from here? Look, we have a monumental task ahead of us, but the key thing to remember is that the future isn't just something that's going to happen to us. It's being built right now. We're laying the foundation with every choice we make. Technology is not destiny. It's a tool. And right now, we are literally building the digital highways, the infrastructure, for a world that's going to be populated not by billions of people, but by trillions of AI agents. Humans just don't get exponentials. It's going to happen so fast. We have this very small window of opportunity to set the rules of the road for them. We have a mandate to get this right. So what's the to-do list? What does this actually look like? Well, it boils down to 3 huge challenges we have to solve. First, we need to establish AI identity. Think digital passports for every autonomous agent so we know who or what we're dealing with. Second, we have to set the rules of the road. We need to build the governance, the guardrails for how these AIs operate. And third, and maybe most important, we have to figure out how to fund the future. We need to design the systems right now that will share the incredible wealth that AI is going to create.
So I'll just leave you with this. The robots are coming. The AI employees, the trillions of autonomous agents, they are on their way. That's not a prediction, it's a certainty. The only question left, the only one that really matters now, is who's writing their rules?
You know, in the middle of this massive AI gold rush, you'd think the biggest winner would be some huge tech company or a Silicon Valley billionaire, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Turns out, it's a tiny Caribbean island, and their story starts with a number that, honestly, it just doesn't look real. $70 million. That's how much a nation with a population smaller than a big university campus made from the AI boom in just 1 year. And get this, they didn't build a single AI. They didn't sell one microchip. All they did was own a digital address that, all of a sudden, the entire world desperately wanted. So how in the world did that happen? Well, the answer pulls back the curtain on this really fascinating quirk in how the internet is built, and it turns out to be a powerful preview of the massive economic shifts that are heading for all of us. Okay, so the secret to Anguilla's incredible fortune, it all comes down to 2 simple letters that, just by sheer luck of history, became the hottest piece of digital real estate on the entire planet. Think of it like a digital zip code. Every country gets one for the internet. It's called a CCTLD. You know, the UK has .uk, Germany has .de. Well, decades ago, the island of Anguilla was assigned .ai. And then, boom, the artificial intelligence explosion happens. And suddenly, every startup, every investor, every tech giant wants that branding. And to get it, they had to pay Anguilla. The speed of this is just, it's mind-bending. I mean, look at this growth. It's a perfect exponential curve, something we humans are terrible at understanding. We see it go from 32 million in 2023 to a projection of 132 million just 3 years later. This isn't just a little extra cash. By 2025, selling these domain names made up nearly half of the government's entire income. It's a total game changer for them. And like their premier, Ellis Webster, says, this isn't just about numbers on a page. It's a chance to completely reshape their country's future. They're pouring this windfall into real things, modernizing their airport, improving healthcare for their seniors, and creating new schools for their kids. And this is where you see the raw, crazy demand. These are auction prices for single web addresses. U.AI sold for $700,000. It's exactly like a 19th century land rush, but it's all digital, and Anguilla just happened to own all the land. So Anguilla's story is incredible. It really is. But it's also the canary in the coal mine. It's a stark reminder that for every massive fortune this revolution creates, there's a potential cost on the other side. As AI generates all this new wealth, what happens to the jobs it makes obsolete? Because here's the thing. While Anguilla is riding this incredible wave of good fortune, some of the world's top economists are warning that for the rest of us, that same wave is about to crash down, and hard. And that word, tsunami, that isn't some blogger trying to get clicks. That is the official warning from the head of the International Monetary Fund. It tells you that the people in charge of the global economy believe we are facing a massive structural change to how we work, and it's happening faster than anything we've ever seen. And you know, the people actually building this tech, they're being surprisingly blunt about what's coming. The CEO of Anthropic, a huge AI company, flat out said that AI agents could eliminate half of all entry-level knowledge worker jobs. We're talking about the first step on the career ladder for accountants, paralegals, analysts, coders, gone. This isn't some fringe idea either. The World Economic Forum actually has a name for this potential future: the age of displacement. It's a scenario they are taking very seriously, where technology moves so fast that society just can't retrain or adapt quickly enough, which could lead to massive economic and social instability. So as you can probably guess, this has kicked off this huge, intense debate at the highest levels of technology and finance. And there are two profoundly different visions of where we're all heading. So on one side, you've got the tech optimists, right? People like Elon Musk, who talks about a future of amazing abundance, or Bill Gates, who's pretty confident all of AI's problems are solvable. But on the other side, you have the financial realists like JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, who are laser focused on social stability and are warning about potential unrest if we don't manage this transition really, really carefully. And that deep divide between the optimists and the realists brings up a critical question. If the very nature of work is about to change for millions of people, how do we support them? I mean, what does a social safety net even look like in the age of AI? Well, one of the biggest ideas being debated is universal basic income, or UBI. The concept's pretty simple. The government gives every citizen a regular, unconditional payment to cover basic needs. It basically creates a financial floor that nobody can fall below, which might be necessary in a world where a steady job is no longer a guarantee. And here's where it gets really interesting. A lot of the architects of this AI revolution, the very people building the systems that might displace all those jobs, are the same ones who have publicly supported UBI. It's almost like they're acknowledging that the tools they're creating are so powerful, they're going to fundamentally rewrite our social contract. And this brings us right back to Anguilla. See, without even trying, they've created this fascinating real-world model. They are taking revenue generated directly from the AI economy, not from taxing human labor, but from selling a digital asset. And they're using it to fund public services for everyone. It's like an accidental test case for a whole new way of funding society. Bill Gates has floated a similar idea, but on a global scale. What if you just directly tax the robots or the AI systems that replace a human's job? You could then take that money and use it to fund retraining programs or help workers transition to new careers. So, the most important thing to realize here is that we're not just sitting around waiting for this future to arrive. We are actively building its foundations right now. The rules and the infrastructure we design today are going to determine exactly what that world looks like. And this is about way more than just writing code. We are designing the digital highways, the virtual property rights, the guardrails, the entire governance system that's going to run the next 100 years. It's a massive infrastructure project, and it's happening almost entirely online. And governments are already getting ready for the next step. At Davos, Singapore just launched the world's first governance framework for what they're calling agentic AI. Now, these are AIs that don't just give you an answer, they take action for you. They book the flight, they file the legal brief, they execute the stock trade. They have agency. Pretty soon, it's not going to be a handful of these AI agents. It's going to be trillions of them, interacting and transacting online, exponentially outnumbering every human on the planet. They're going to need digital IDs, passwords, the whole shebang. So as we build this new world, the final question isn't just about what rules we write for the AIs. It's about what rules of the road we write for ourselves. What kind of future are we actually choosing to build? So, what if the answer to one of the biggest economic puzzles of our time, what to do when AI takes over, wasn't some complicated new tax, but a 2-letter web address? And what if a tiny island nation just, completely stumbled upon it by accident? Let's get into it. Think about this for a second. Imagine a country where nearly half of all its government revenue is coming directly from the AI boom. Not from building AI, not from taxing tech giants, but from something way, way simpler. How is that even possible? And there's your answer. We're talking about Anguilla. It's a small Caribbean island with a population just over 15,000 people that has somehow found itself smack in the middle of a digital gold rush. The story of how is pretty incredible. Right, so this wasn't some master plan. This was pure, unbelievable luck. Anguilla basically hit an accidental jackpot, and honestly, it is changing absolutely everything for them. Okay, so to really get how wild this is, you gotta picture Anguilla. It's this beautiful Caribbean paradise, right? Population of 15,000, its whole economy built on tourism. But it turns out its most valuable asset wasn't a pristine beach. Nope. It was 2 letters assigned to it decades ago for its country code domain, .ai. Just look at the sheer exponential growth here. It's staggering. In 2023, they pulled in $32 million. That's a fifth of their entire government revenue. By 2025, that's estimated to be over $70 million, getting close to half of their revenue. And the number of domains is just exploding. This isn't a trickle of cash, it's a fire hose. And this chart just makes it crystal clear. We are not talking about slow and steady growth here. Ever since tools like ChatGPT went mainstream, the demand for anything with a .ai at the end has gone through the roof. And Anguilla is just sitting there, reaping all of the benefits. And here's the crucial part. This isn't just money piling up in some government account. This digital dividend is being put to work right away. It's funding real-world stuff, airport expansions, new roads, even tax relief and better health services for its people. It's a direct connection from the digital economy straight to a better quality of life. But there's another side to this coin. The very same AI boom that's been a total blessing for Anguilla is causing some deep, deep anxiety for workers all over the world. This is the part of the story we call the Great Disruption. So from the 30,000-foot view, the perspective is pretty optimistic. You have people like Bill Gates framing AI as a simple productivity booster. And in classic economic terms, yeah, that's a win. You get more output, more efficiency. That's the promise, right? But down on the ground, for the people actually doing the work, it feels completely different. For workers who don't really have a say in how this tech gets rolled out, it doesn't feel like a tool to help them. It feels like a direct threat to their entire livelihood. And this feeling is everywhere. Research from Mercer shows this huge disconnect between leaders and employees. And it's not just about factory jobs anymore. AI is coming for cognitive work, the white-collar jobs in writing, analysis, and coding that we all thought were safe. So this massive society-wide disruption leads us to a pretty radical but now increasingly mainstream idea. It's a universal basic question. If AI takes all the jobs, who's going to take care of the people? And that brings us to this, Universal Basic Income, or UBI. For anyone who's not familiar, the idea is actually pretty simple. It's a regular, no-strings-attached payment to every single citizen. It just provides a basic financial floor, like a safety net for a world where there might be fewer jobs to go around. And listen, this is not some fringe idea anymore. When you have people like Elon Musk saying that UBI is going to be necessary, the whole conversation has changed. The very people building this new future are the ones telling us we're going to need a whole new social contract. And here's Sam Altman from OpenAI laying out the logic pretty directly. He's saying AI will create such phenomenal wealth that we can just tax it. Tax the companies, tax the assets, and then redistribute that money directly to everybody. And he is definitely not alone. Just look at this list. From Meta to Amazon to Virgin, you have this powerful chorus of tech billionaires, the people actually driving this revolution, and they're all publicly backing some form of UBI. Why? Well, because they see what's coming down the line. So the big question is always, how do you pay for it? And this is where our story comes full circle. We have this massive problem of job disruption and a potential solution in UBI. Now let's look at the incredible blueprint that Anguilla accidentally created from its beaches. Okay, this right here is the key idea. The standard proposal you hear from everyone is to tax the AI economy after the wealth has been created. But the Anguilla model shows us a totally different way. Sell to the AI economy. Instead of trying to tax profits, they're making money by selling something absolutely essential that the AI industry needs: digital real estate. We should probably call it what it is: a sovereign digital dividend. It's not a tax, and it's not a handout. It's a nation using its own unique digital asset to participate directly in this new economy, creating a revenue stream that goes right back to funding its people. It's a potential model for the rest of the world to look at. But the story doesn't stop there. Because as AI evolves from just being a tool to becoming an autonomous agent, basically a worker in its own right, we face a whole new, even bigger set of challenges. How on earth do we govern this new workforce? And the stakes here could not be higher. This slide basically lays out the two futures we're choosing between right now. Down one path, you have a kind of techno-socialism, where the incredible wealth created by AI is shared broadly to help everyone. But down the other path, you get neo-feudalism, where all that wealth and power is concentrated in the hands of the very few who own the technology. The choices we make about AI governance are what will decide which future we end up in.
And this brings us right to the next frontier. We're not just talking about software anymore. We're talking about autonomous agents. Agents that can act, make decisions, and manage things on their own. And that means we need answers to some really fundamental questions. Like, how do you even give an AI a digital ID? Who's responsible when it messes up? And how do you secure a company when your employees are literally just lines of code?
So let's end with this thought. We are, right now, building the new citizens of the internet. And soon, they will outnumber us by billions, maybe even trillions. So the most urgent question we face isn't just about our jobs anymore. It's about what kind of digital society we actually want to build. What rules will they live by? And who gets to decide?
Okay, let's just state the obvious. We are living through an absolute explosion. AI is reshaping everything, and it's happening faster than we can even wrap our heads around. It's creating unbelievable wealth, but it's also raising some pretty deep questions about our future. You've got this incredible opportunity on one hand, and this deep anxiety on the other. And believe it or not, the whole story starts in probably the last place you'd ever expect.
So let's start with a number, a big one, over $70 million. Now, that's not some tech company's stock valuation. Nope. That's the projected revenue from one single, very specific source for just 1 year, 2025.
And that, right there, is the $1 million, or I guess $70 million question. How did this massive pile of cash get tied to the fate of Anguilla, a tiny island nation that's mostly known for tourism? Well, the answer tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the strange new economic world AI is busy creating.
So, get this. Decades ago, when the internet was being mapped out, every country got a 2-letter code. The UK got .UK, Germany got .de, and, by just a total stroke of dumb luck, the island of Anguilla was given .ai. For years, it was basically useless. But then, the AI boom hit. And suddenly, those 2 little letters became the hottest real estate on the entire internet.
This chart just lays it all out. It's a digital gold rush. In 2023, selling .ai domains brought in $32 million. Fast forward to 2025, and that number is expected to blast past 70 million. We're talking about exponential growth here, a kind of change that our brains are, frankly, just not built to understand intuitively. It's wild.
And to really put that into perspective, think about this. This digital asset, a complete fluke of history, is on track to fund nearly half of the entire government's budget. This isn't just a nice little side project. It's a total economic game changer for them, all because the world suddenly went crazy for 2 letters. And don't think this is just about selling a ton of cheap domains. Oh no, we're talking about serious value. Companies are shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Look at this, U.AI for $700 grand. For these premium addresses, they're treating them like beachfront property in a brand new digital world.
Okay, so let's zoom out from the island for a second, because Anguilla's story is really just the canary in the coal mine. It's a symptom of something way bigger. You look at what the world leaders were talking about at Davos, and the conversation wasn't about if AI would change things. It was about the absolutely earth-shaking scale of that change. I mean, NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang just nailed it. The money pouring into AI right now, for chips, for data centers, it's not just another tech bubble. He called it the largest infrastructure build-out in human history. We're talking about something on the scale of building the railroads or the electrical grid. That's the engine that's fueling Anguilla's lottery win.
But here's the flip side of that massive build-out, massive disruption. At that same conference, you had people like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan being brutally honest. When he was asked if AI would mean fewer jobs, there was zero hesitation. He just said yes. The same tech that's creating all this wealth is, without a doubt, going to displace a lot of human workers.
And yet, you get this totally different vision from people like Elon Musk. He sees the exact same forces at play, but not as a threat. He sees a path to a future of amazing abundance, a world where technology provides for everyone and work becomes, well, optional. So which is it? Are we headed for disruption or utopia?
The answer to that question might actually lie in a concept that was all over the place at Davos: the rise of AI agents.
See, we have to stop thinking about AI as just a tool, like a smarter search engine. We have to start thinking of it as a whole new kind of employee, a digital worker.
This is what the experts are calling the agentic leap. It's that moment when AI goes from just answering your questions to actually doing complex multi-step things on its own. It's not just software anymore. It's a real factor of production. It's a digital colleague. And this isn't science fiction. This progression is happening right now. It starts with AI doing simple, repetitive tasks for us. Then it becomes a co-pilot, making us better at our jobs. The next step, humans start managing whole teams of AI agents. And the final step, fully autonomous AI employees joining the workforce. And we're not talking about a few thousand, we're talking millions, then billions, an exponential explosion of digital workers that will dwarf the human population.
So, this brings all of us, all of humanity, to a massive fork on the road. The technology itself doesn't have an agenda, but the world we choose to build with it sure will. How we decide to manage this whole transition, all the wealth it creates, and all the disruption it causes, is going to define what our society looks like for generations.
The World Economic Forum actually mapped out 4 possible futures. Are we headed for a cyberpunk dystopia, a kind of neo-feudalism where a tiny few control everything? Or could we actually achieve a solarpunk future, a world of planned abundance where the benefits of all this tech are shared by everybody? The thing is, it's our choice to make. And this brings us right back to where we started, that tiny island. What if Anguilla's incredible luck isn't just a quirky story for the news? What if it's actually an accidental pilot program, a blueprint for how to navigate the very future we're trying to choose?
Think about it. This money isn't a tax on its citizens. It's basically a fee, a toll booth on the digital superhighway that the global AI industry pays to use a key piece of infrastructure that humanity built. That money, a direct dividend from the AI boom, goes straight into funding public services for everyone on the island. Better healthcare, new infrastructure, you name it.
And this isn't some crazy, out there idea. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has proposed something almost identical, but on a global scale. His argument is that AI is going to create so much wealth that we should tax one of its core components, like computing power, and just give that money directly to every single person. A universal basic income funded by the productivity of machines. So, what's the takeaway here? Anguilla literally just stumbled into a system where the explosive growth of AI directly funds the well-being of its people. It's an accidental blueprint for sharing the abundance. And the big question that leaves for the rest of us is, can we learn from this happy accident? Can we actually plan for abundance on purpose and build a future where the incredible wealth of AI benefits everyone, not just a lucky few?
Today, we're going to dive into a story that, believe it or not, connects a tiny little Caribbean island to the massive, world-changing force of artificial intelligence. And it's a connection that just might reveal a surprising blueprint for all of our futures. Okay, let's get right into it.
So really, what could an island with only about 16,000 people possibly have to do with the tech that's completely reshaping the global economy? Well, the answer is a lot more important than you think. In fact, it's kind of like the canary in the coal mine for what's coming for all of us. Yep, it all comes down to just these 2 letters, AI. See, the country code domain that was assigned to the island of Anguilla decades ago has, by a total accident of history, put it smack dab in the middle of a digital gold rush. And let me be clear, this is not just some quirky little internet story. For the people of Anguilla, the AI boom has meant a real, honest-to-goodness economic windfall, a true digital gold rush that is literally rewriting their entire nation's future. Get this, by 2025, Anguilla is projected to bring in over $70 million, all from companies, startups, and investors who are scrambling to get a web address that ends in .ai. I mean, that is a staggering amount of money for such a small nation. It's becoming a huge piece of their GDP. Now, what's really wild about this slide is the speed, the sheer velocity of this growth. In 2023, .ai revenue made up 20% of the government's budget. Just 2 years later, it's expected to be nearly half. This isn't some side project for them. It's quickly becoming the main engine of their entire economy. So, why the sudden gold rush for .ai domains, right? To really get why Anguilla basically hit the jackpot, we have to zoom out a bit. All that money flowing into this tiny island, it's just a small ripple from a much, much bigger global disruption that world leaders are starting to call an AI tsunami. And that's not just some dramatic phrase. That warning came directly from the chief of the International Monetary Fund at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And the message was crystal clear. A massive, unstoppable wave of change is heading right for labor markets everywhere, and most of us just don't grasp the exponential speed of it. You see, this tsunami isn't about simple tools like chatbots anymore. The next wave is something called agentic AI, and you should think of these as autonomous digital employees. They can reason, they can manage complex projects, and they can make decisions all on their own inside a business. And here's the kicker. They're coming for white-collar jobs first. The CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, he put it about as bluntly as you can. He said this change is faster, broader, and unavoidable. And when someone asked him if AI would mean fewer jobs in the next 5 years, he didn't even hesitate. He just said yes. So you can imagine this sense of an unavoidable collision between incredible promise and incredible danger. It completely dominated the conversation among world leaders at Davos. They're all trying to figure out how to handle a technology that could create unimaginable productivity, but also threatens to cause massive social upheaval. And this chart just illustrates that conflict perfectly. On one side, you have these really optimistic projections of millions and millions of new jobs. But on the other side, you have rising anxiety among workers and CEOs who are openly admitting that jobs are being displaced faster than new ones are being created. And what makes this whole problem even worse is a massive skills gap. The data that was presented at Davos showed that over half of all employees, 55%, received zero workplace training in the last year. Zero. The workforce just isn't being prepared for the new kinds of jobs the AI economy is supposed to be creating. So, okay, we've got this massive problem of job displacement, a workforce that isn't ready for what's next. But remember, our tiny island? While the world's leaders were debating all of this at Davos, Anguilla was, completely by accident, already modeling a potential solution. Anguilla's jackpot isn't just a lottery win. It's a real-world example of a totally new economic model, one where the very infrastructure of AI itself generates a dividend for society. It's like they're collecting a toll from the very technology that's causing all the disruption. And just look at what they're doing with the money. It is being plowed directly back into the well-being of their citizens. A bigger airport, better roads, tax relief, more healthcare. They are, for all intents and purposes, funding an accidental universal basic income, and they're doing it through sales, not taxes. And you know, this idea isn't just an accident anymore. The leaders right at the heart of the AI revolution, people like OpenAI's Sam Altman, are actually proposing it on purpose. He argues that since AI is going to generate just a phenomenal amount of wealth, we should figure out a way to capture a slice of it and give it directly to citizens. The name for this idea is Universal Basic Income, or UBI. Think of it as a social safety net, but one that's designed for an era where work itself might become optional for a lot of people. The logic is actually pretty simple. As the number of AI agents grows exponentially, eventually outnumbering humans by a huge margin, the incredible wealth they create can be harnessed to provide for everyone's basic needs. And that brings us to the ultimate choice. Anguilla's story is really just a small-scale preview of a massive decision that all of humanity is going to have to make. How do we manage the immense wealth and power of AI so that it benefits everybody? Well, this model from the World Economic Forum kind of lays out the stakes. Depending on the choices we make, we could end up in one of four very different futures. One is a world of shared, automated prosperity. Another is a world of massive inequality, like a new feudalism. Or we could just reject the technology and stagnate. Or worst of all, we just fail to adapt and everything collapses. And really, it boils down to a pretty stark choice between two of those paths. On one side, you have a vibrant, optimistic, solar punk kind of future, one of abundance and equality. And on the other, a dark, dystopian, cyberpunk future of neo-feudalism, where whoever owns the tech becomes a new ruling class. Now, that optimistic path is sometimes called techno-socialism. And it's really important to get this. This isn't a political movement. It's a potential social outcome. It's a future where we harness technology to solve our biggest challenges, creating a world of abundance for everybody, funded by the very machines that are doing all the work. Which brings us right back to where we started. Humans, what some are calling the grandma race. We're the ones who built the internet. We laid down the digital highways and put up the guardrails that AI was raised on. And as trillions of AI agents come online, they're going to need identities, domains, and infrastructure to work. The tolls paid on these digital roads, just like the fees paid to little Anguilla,
could be what funds our shared human future, making sure the wealth of AI benefits everyone. Maybe the final exam for AGI will be to run its own domain name system, a pretty fitting test for a child of the very internet we created.
Okay, let's dive into one of the biggest questions out there right now. Is AI going to take our jobs? The debate is absolutely raging, and you've got tech titans basically at war over this. But here's the thing. While they're all arguing about this massive storm on the horizon, we're going to talk about this crazy, unexpected lifeboat that just kind of washed up on shore. And it might just be the blueprint for all of us. I mean, look at this. It really doesn't get more black and white. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, you had these two giants saying the exact opposite thing. On one side, you've got Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, the guy literally making the chips that power this whole revolution. And he's all optimism, chanting jobs, jobs, jobs. And then in the other corner, Alex Karp from Palantir. And his message is, well, it's a lot darker. He says AI will destroy jobs. So who are we supposed to believe here?
Well, if you look at the data for a second, the concern feels pretty real. The World Economic Forum itself, the same folks hosting that debate, they're projecting 92 million jobs will be displaced by 2030. Just let that number sink in. 92 million. That's not just a number, that's a potential tsunami about to hit the global workforce. But, and this is a big but, the story is more complex than just.
See, what's really going on here is something much deeper. It's not just that jobs are disappearing, it's that the very nature of work is changing. AI is getting incredibly good at all the predictable, repetitive stuff, the things you can neatly track in a spreadsheet. So what's left for us humans? All the high-impact, strategic, messy, creative work. And here's the catch, how in the world do you measure that? It's way, way harder, and it's creating a totally new kind of pressure on all of us. Look, we've all heard the robots are coming story before, right? From factory arms to Excel macros, we've seen automation. But this is not that. Something is fundamentally different this time around. We're moving from simple automation, which is really just a tool following a script, to genuine autonomy. We're talking about systems that can actually think, plan, and act all on their own.
And the name for this new game is Agentic AI. And you really need to get this distinction because it's a big one. This isn't just a smarter chatbot. No. We are talking about full-on virtual employees. Literally. Imagine a digital team member that has its own role, its own memory of past projects. It even has its own company login and password to get work done, all without a human pulling the strings. Wild, right?
So what does one of these virtual employees actually look like under the hood?
Well, Singapore actually put out the world's first rulebook for AI agents, and it breaks it down perfectly. You've got the model, which is basically its brain. You give it instructions, that's its job description. It has memory, so it can learn from experience. It has planning and reasoning to figure out a strategy. It has tools, the apps it can use. And it has protocols, which is how it talks to us and other AIs. You combine all that, and boom, you've got a digital work.
So is this just some sci-fi concept, or is it affecting the job market like right now? Oh, it's here, and it is absolutely explosive. Get this, demand for roles that require AI agent skills has skyrocketed by over 1,500%. That's not a slow trend, that's a rocket launch, completely reshaping what companies are desperately trying to hire for as we speak.
Okay, so the job market is going through this massive warp speed change. World leaders are at Davos debating what to do about the coming storm. But while they're all talking, a tiny little island seems to have stumbled, completely by accident, onto the lifeboat. This is the canary in the coal mine, and you have got to hear the story.
That lifeboat? It's a small island in the Caribbean called Anguilla. We're talking a population of just about 15,000 people. Super small. For pretty much its entire history, its economy was all about tourism. Sun, sand, you got the picture. But then a random bit of internet paperwork from back in the 90s ended up changing their entire destiny.
So, way back when the internet was being carved up, every country got a 2-letter domain code, while Anguilla was assigned .ai. For decades, this was kind of useless. Who cared? But then the AI explosion hit, and all of a sudden, every tech startup, every AI company in the world wanted those 2 letters. And the result? Just look at this, $32 million in revenue in 2023 on its way to a projected $70 million in 2025. It is a straight-up exponential windfall.
And to really wrap your head around how insane this is, that money from just selling a domain name with 2 little letters is on track to pay for almost half of their entire government budget. This isn't just a nice little side hustle for them. It's a true digital dividend that's rewriting their entire national economy. And the best part is, they're not just going on a spending spree. They're being incredibly smart about this. They're pouring it back into the country, expanding the airport, fixing roads, giving people tax breaks, and funding healthcare for seniors and kids. And this is the really brilliant part. They're starting a sovereign wealth fund. They're making sure this isn't just a one-time boom, but something that provides for their people for generations to come. So yeah, it's an incredible story. But it's so much more than just one country winning the lottery. What happened in Anguilla, totally by accident, might actually be the blueprint for all of us, a model for how the entire world can navigate the AI disruption, and maybe, just maybe, a way to make AI pay its own way.
And this isn't some crazy out there idea. You've got people like Bill Gates talking about this very thing. His point is, look, AI is going to make our economies way more productive, but it's also going to cause disruption. So we've got to figure out new ways to fund our social safety nets. He even floated the idea of, taxing AI activities to help fund that transition for workers.
And all of this talk inevitably leads to one big idea, something that used to be on the fringe, but is now front and center. Universal Basic Income, or UBI. The concept is pretty simple. A regular, guaranteed payment sent to every citizen, no strings attached. It's meant to be an economic floor, right? A safety net for a future where a traditional 9-to-5 job might not be the norm for everyone. So let's scale up the Anguilla model. This is where it gets really mind-bending. In the near future, we're not talking about thousands of AI agents. We're talking trillions. And every single one of those agents is going to need a unique digital identity to operate online. Think of it like a digital passport. Now imagine selling those identities, just like Anguilla sells .ai domains. The revenue would be astronomical. And here's the key. This isn't a tax, it's a digital dividend from the infrastructure AI has to use to exist. That could be how you fund a global UBI.
So the very digital roads that AI needs to drive on could pay for the safety nets we need. It's elegant. But we have to step back for a second and remember something absolutely fundamental here. It is so easy to talk about AI like it's some alien species that just landed on Earth. But it's not. It didn't build the world it operates in. We did.
We built the internet. We wrote the protocols. We designed the whole domain name system. We built what one source calls the digital cradle, the entire playground where AI was born and raised. And what did it learn in that cradle? It learned from us. From all our languages, our books, our art, the entire sum of human knowledge and culture that we poured into this system. That's its source code. And that brings us to right now, to this massive crossroads, and there are really 2 clear paths ahead of us. Down one road, you have this cyberpunk future, the aesthetic, displacement, social fracture, where all the incredible gains from AI are hoarded by a tiny few. But there's another path, the solarpunk future, one of supercharged progress, of harmony between humans and AI, where all this new abundance is actually shared with everyone. So how will we know when an AI is actually ready for that kind of partnership? Well, here's a fascinating idea for a final exam. Forget beating us at chess. The ultimate test for a mature AGI should be this. Can it take responsible stewardship over the very system it grew up in? Let it run its own part of the internet's domain name system. If it can handle that without breaking everything, well, then maybe it's passed the test.
Because in the end, that's what this all comes down to. The choice is ours. We have the power here. We're the ones setting the rules of the road. We built the digital cradle that gave birth to this incredible technology. So the only question left, the one that really matters, is what kind of future are we going to build with it?